We leave Montpellier and the Mistral and the winds behind us as we head inland. As soon as we move away from the Mediterranean, the roads actually start to climb up quite a bit. They're heavy roads. There's a second category climb out on the course, and that's after they've gone over the climb of the 13 winds. I wonder if that's giving a little bit of an idea of how difficult today's stage is going to be. A small fourth category climb down towards the end before they charge into the streets of Albi. The question to me, Phil, is when we look at the race profile, halfway through there you can see that second category climb. Big question mark is how will they attack that second category climb? If they don't hit it hard, the sprinters could very easily survive today.
Yes, on the two stages in Corsica, the two second category climbs there actually broke Mark Cavendish, but he was sick. He's a bit better now, so maybe he will see the finishing line today.
Out on the open road, a beautiful day here. It's 205.5 kilometers or 128 miles on the stage and the run into Albi. Our weather report is presented by Palmer's. It is a dry day. Temperatures hovering right around 83 degrees. The wind negligible, and it is supposed to be sunny throughout the entire day. Right now, we send it over to two of the very best in the business, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
Thanks very much indeed, Todd. And it is a glorious day, and there is no wind. It is just a beautiful day to be on the road of the Tour de France. And for the man from South Africa, I can tell you the newspapers there, who's made the headlines all over the country, the Cape Argus, which is based in Cape Town, had a three-quarter front page picture of him saying the golden boy. And that's what he is.
Oh, well, certainly, Phil, that's huge for African cycling and as well South African cycling, because although most people don't regard South Africa as being a great cycling nation, they have participation events like the Cape Argus we talked about yesterday, which limits the number of participants to 37,000 people, and they get that many people signing up within the first 3 days that they open up to that participation event.
Yes, and in fact they declared an Impi Yellow Cycling Day in all of Africa today, where they've asked all cyclists to go out and wear something yellow to celebrate their first ever maillot jaune. But as always, we've got to get to the other end of this stage. So has Daryl Impey. We've got two riders who've gone clear at the second attempt soon after the start, and there they are, still holding on to a lead which is slowly diminishing. So let's go down, have an early chat then with Steve Perino.
Well, Phil, how great is this story about Daryl Impey and, of course, all of Orca Green Edge? In fact, when I talked to the director, he said, you know, one thing about being on this team, you can't just be a great rider, you got to be a great character, and everyone has to gel in that way. And I heard a little bit about the gelling this morning on the team bus. Apparently, they were cranking a tune called Impey. And I hadn't heard of that tune. Not many people had. Apparently, it is the unofficial South African anthem, and it is a Zulu word for armed body of men. I haven't heard it myself, but I understand it is quite an inspiring song.
Steve, stay tuned, because here's the song.
Impey, onansimpieza, ubani benga chinja mabubesi. Impey, onansimpieza, ubani benga chinja mabubesi. Impey, onansimpieza, ubani benga chinja mabubesi. Impey, onansimpieza, ubani benga chinja mabubesi.
Yeah, well, you know, first listen to it, I got to say, indeed inspirational, and maybe that explains all the smiling faces that they came off the bus. Great cast of characters, this Orca Green Edge team.
Yes, indeed they are. It's taken 100 years, but we now have the African influence on the Tour de France in this 100th edition of the event.
Well, if that won't inspire him to go to war today, I'm not sure what will, because certainly it rouses the blood. But we're not far away now from reaching the top of the first climb of the day, the third category climb, the Col des Trois Vents, 13 wins, I should say. And, of course, still surviving, Jens Voigt, number 48 at the back. What an incredible character, and I'm sure that he's inspired many a bike rider throughout his career, with Blail Kadri at the front there. In fact, the interesting thing about Blail Kadri is he's the local boy today, if you like. And during his amateur career, career. He was a member of the club here, right in Albi.
He knows all of these roads. He's got a lot of friends here, and he's been on the attack from the gun. He clearly wanted to be in the breakaway because it was a breakaway of 6 went from the gun. He was in there, and then when they got caught, he went again with Jens Voigt. This is the first climb of the day. They call it 13 Vents. 6.9 kilometers in length. 5.6 is the gradient, and takes us up to just under 2,000 feet. We're not far from the summit here. It's a third category climb, so both riders get points and nobody else in that King of the Mountains competition. In fact, our live coverage starting today, we all get we get to see all of the prizes along the route today. This is the first one. Now, Kadri sits in third place overall in the King of the Mountains, and if he wins it, and there's no reason why he won't, he gets 2 points. It'll put him up into second, Paul.
Yeah, that's what his plan is, I would think, today. These are his home training grounds. He trained on this road. He actually lives in Toulouse nowadays, but as I said earlier, he was in the club of Albi, and I don't think he'll get much challenge coming from Jens Voigt. Jens is looking for the big breakaway here this afternoon. He knows that this is one of the first stages. The race profile today lends itself to the success of the breakaway, but they're not giving these two riders much of a headway. They built a 6:15 advantage as they summit. No challenge at all, so Kadri will get himself the 2 points. More importantly, Phil, in a few kilometres' time, there is a second category climb at 15 kilometres here, and that is the Col de la Croix de Muni. And if he gets that, then Kadri will be in the lead.
And that
thing is, Phil, to bear in mind that if Orica Green Edge want to keep Daryl Impey in the yellow jersey for one more day, I'm pretty certain he will lose it tomorrow when we go into the high Pyrenees. But it will also make a steady tempo on this next second category climb. This is the biggest high spot of the day. And if they hit this second category climb at a decent tempo, the sprinters could very well surprise. And it could be a bonus day for guys like Mark Cavendish, Andre Greipel and Peter Sagan.
it could well be. As they snake up the climb there, let's confirm the result of that climb of the Col de 13 Vents. Kadri getting the 2 points, Voigt 1. There's no third place on the third category climb. Overall, you see Kadri's consolidated in second place now, and there's 5 points for the first over the next climb. He's just 3 off the lead of Pierre Rolland. There's only been 2 leaders in the King of the Mountains, and currently it's Rolland. Well, while we're on these early days, let's unveil our secrets here and have a look at the Cadillac performance predictions. Yesterday, the Brits had to bow down. Well, it was a good day for the Brits to go behind on Independence Day. And Bob and Scott, 6 for Bob, 11. All 4 of us had the 4 riders first across the line. The order was favouring the Americans, who've now got 17 points ahead of the British's 15 points. Let's have a look at who we've gone for day. Well, I've gone for Michael Kwiatkowski in the white jersey. I think he's been getting over these hills. He's a good sprinter. Edward Boysenhagen, he's been on the floor today, by the way, but he's okay, and that's Paul's choice. Andre Greipel, so Bob believes the sprinters will survive, and Scott has gone for Peter Sagan. He would certainly survive the hills normally today, so it could be very interesting today.
I have to say, Peter Sagan is probably a very, very good bet, because he, of all of the sprinters, is the man who can get over the climbs the best. It all depends how the main field tackles this second category climb now as to whether or not the sprinters survive. We saw FDJ, for example, when we were on the island of Corsica, hit 1 or 2 of the second category climbs very, very hard to try and eliminate the sprinters. Well, they certainly did on that occasion, but unfortunately for them, they eliminated their own sprinter, Nasser Bouhanni, who actually had to pull out of the race a couple of days ago.
Well, we're going to the town of La Cône-les-Bains here, and they've been really hard at work with the balloons there. The Tour de France is popular as ever. Over the mountains here of the Hérault, the Orgues of Tozac, which is the organs of Tozac in English. So as we sneak around with our helicopter, the riders are approximately 4 minutes now behind those 2 leaders. 73.7 miles to go. We'll see you in a...
No problem with what's spotting him. You see that little blue box on the near side of each of these riders' rear forks? Well, that's a transponder which gives us the very quick results. Not always the exact result, but gives an indication of where people have finished in the main field, and that's how we were able yesterday to see that there was in fact a gap of 5 seconds between the leading group of 16 or 17 riders and Cadel Evans as he crossed the line, and that's what gave Daryl Impey the new lead in the overall standings.
And a little take on of the mounted police from the Canadian Rockies. Not quite the Rockies here. This is the Col de la Croix de Muni. It's just under 5 miles of the climb, 6.7 kilometres.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to see Sven Tuft, the time trial champion of Canada, who did a lot of work yesterday. But his compatriot Ryder Heyerdahl, a winner of the Giro d'Italia last year, he was actually sitting at the back of the pack for the majority of yesterday's stage because he's suffering with a cracked rib.
So with the flag of Australia keeping pace with the peloton, the Australian team dominating so far with their South African leader today. That is Daryl Impey. We'll still be on the climb when you rejoin us. Very much indeed, Steve. Well, we're getting close to the summit, so at least the two guys working hard. We could have a new leader on the road, at least in the King of the Mountains competition. He's nearly up to the top here, Kadri. The peloton being driven for a different reason by Peter Sagan's Cannondale team. They want to distance themselves from the other sprinters, and that'll make his job a bit easier when we get down to the green jersey sprint, which is about 40 kilometres ahead at Vian. And then, of course, if they don't get back, he will be the fastest finisher left for any finish down in Albi. There's Mark Cavendish. Just wants to see the top of this hill, and then he can organise the team's teammates who have dropped back to guide him to start close down the gap.
He could get some help as well because not too far ahead of him on this climb, Race Radio has just said that Andre Greipel has also been left behind because of the acceleration of Team Cannondale. You can see the Cannondale riders on the front, Phil. They're very, very keen to make sure they eliminate as many of these sprinters as possible.
Yes, well, Steve, I've just seen Greg Henderson alongside Seberg, so it looks like you've got them all back there with you.
It does look that way. 3 of them by my count. So Lotto Belisol not going to be able to do a lot to help Greipel get back on.
It's going to be tough for them at the moment. Cavendish just wanting to get this climb over with himself. Just checking out just which sprinters have found themselves down in this group. Pavel Bruce is the rider over there. Third of a kilometre to the summit now, so they're going to survive. The gap, in fact, they've climbed it very quickly because the gap is still 2:19.
It's going to be very complicated King of the Mountains calculation, I would have to say. Blair Kadri, I would expect to get maximum points over the top. That will give him a total of 12. Now, if Pierre Rolland in the group behind comes across the line in 3rd place, that'll give him a total of 12 as well. What a battle.
Then it goes to count back, and I think Rolland might well keep it, but it's touch and go. They both will have won a 2nd category climb.
It will go back to the number of 2nd category climbs, the number of 3rd category climbs. It'll go back to a count back, but there are still 2 climbs out on the course down towards the end, a 3rd and a 4th category climb.
No challenge. Kadri's been given the points. Voigt is not going to upset his big day here. Now it's more interesting because here's trouble. This is for the 3rd place here, and this is Pierre Rolland, and then it'll be complications.
Maybe not, because watch out here. One of the teammates of Blair Kadri's come right onto the wheel of Pierre Rolland, and the idea now is for him to try and get across the line in front of Pierre Rolland, who is the leader. What a battle this is going to be.
Well, let's watch out, because he's just going to sit at the back here and try and jump him as he comes over the top. Now, there is confirmation Greipel and Cavendish are back in that chase group, and they are losing ground over a minute behind the peloton just now.
In a 2nd category climb, there are 4 places that will give you points for the riders to crest the summit in that order. The first 2 have gone by. Maximum points going to Blair Kadri. Now, there are 2 points left for the 3rd rider to cross the line. Now, Pierre Rolland, if he gets those 2 points, he will be equal on points with Blair Kadri. Now, the reason that the teammate is in 2nd position there from the AG2R team is he wants to beat the other Frenchman to the summit, stealing that point away from him, therefore giving the lead in that competition to his own team leader.
It's a good tactic, and he's getting the free ride up at the moment. He would rather like the peloton to join, but if not, it's up to him to try and jump around. There's the sprint started now by the man in the polka dot. He's led all of the way up. As we take a trip off to, for some reason, across the River Tom, he's coming up towards the climb now, and he's still clear here.
Well, Roland hasn't managed to get rid of the rider from AG2R, who responded very, very quickly to the initial acceleration. Now, the rider in second position is going to be very, very motivated. Look at this move now.
Well, this time I think Roland has not got the legs now, and this is going to give him at least the lead on the road here for Blel Kadri. That's what you do if you've got a strong man. Good riding by the team. La Mondiale, AG2R La Mondiale. So, but there's still more points available. It's not all done yet.
It's not all done yet, but I've always said, Phil, we always think, and people always regard cycling as an individual sport. But you know what? You cannot win even these smaller competitions without having teammates alongside, and that was a really good point there, where you see that the teammate came out to steal the points away from a competitor. So, good job there.
Very good job indeed for Romain Bardet, who came over in third place for his teammate. Kadri getting a 5, Voigt 3, Bardet 2, and Pierre Roland fourth place and 1. It now gives a 1-point advantage on the road in the King of the Mountains to Kadri over Roland, with 3 more points at stake before the finish today. As we look out across the beautiful department of the Hérault, shortly to become the department of the Tarn. As we run off the mountain of the Col de la Croix de Mouny, we change departments here in France. And it's sort of on a plateau for a little while now. That will make it that bit harder for Cavendish and Greipel and that group at the back. They've got to bridge 3 full minutes as they've topped out over the Col. And that's going to be a very, very hard and long chase, because as you can see, the riders from Cannondale here know what they've done, and they're not going to throw it back into the court of the sprinters Greipel and Cavendish. So Peter Sagan's whipped up the horses, and they're going to keep the pressure on here. And it stays on a plateau of around about 2,000 feet now. We don't really go up or down for quite a way before we descend for the green jersey sprint. So good work horsing, and they're claiming he'd be very happy too, not least the South African leader there, Daryl Impey, and his Green Edge team, Orica Green Edge team, happy to let other tactics play out now.
Yep, and a lot of other teams will want to take a back seat, because tomorrow is a very important strategic game. Tomorrow we go up into the High Pyrenees. The group containing Andre Greipel is about 1 minute and 10 seconds behind the yellow jersey group. They will be chasing like maniacs to try and get back into the peloton. But also 2 minutes behind Greipel, you've got the group containing Mark Cavendish. We're setting ourselves up for a very, very long chase all the way down to the finish in Albi. And Team Cannondale have decided they're up for the game.
Let's go back inside the race then with Steve Perino. Steve?
I've been trying to keep an eye on this group back here that includes many of the Lotto Belisol riders that are in fact behind Greipel. So they've got 3 teammates behind Greipel, who's apparently 1:10 back. As far as Cavendish's team, he's got all kinds of support. There are 6 riders in all, including Cavendish, providing support to bring him back.
Well, from what the times we're getting, Steve, Greipel's group is about 1 1/4 minutes of getting back to the peloton, but we go back quite a long way, nearly over 3 minutes to the group you're following containing Cavendish at the moment. So that's the situation on the road. Greipel is not in the same group as his teammates. Greg Henderson and Seberg are back here. Greipel is in the group nearly 2 minutes in front of them, so he's gone up that mountain pretty well for a big man. There he is, number 24. Yes, looking at Greipel here. He's had a good climb, Paul. He's only conceded just over a minute on the climb, so he should get back there, you know. Not so sure about the Cavendish group, but then Greipel's going to get back without his lead-out men, because they're behind with Cavendish.
Well, it's setting itself up for a massive big chase. The race situation at the moment is we've got the 2 leaders way off the front at about 1.5 minutes, which is Voigt and Blel Kadri. Chasing in the main field is Peter Sagan's team of Team Cannondale. 1.5 minutes further back, you've got Andre Greipel, and there's a lot of riders in that Andre Greipel group, which makes me think it may well be that Greipel could catch up with the yellow jersey group. But yes, I agree with you, Phil. Mark Cavendish a further 2 minutes in arrears. It's going to be a long, hard day in the saddle for him and his teammates. It depends on whether or not he's got any friends in that group with him.
Well, sprinters don't usually have friends, but we'll see. I mean, and tomorrow, of course, we're into the Pyrenees. Do you want to give all your energy away today and really have a tough day in the mountains tomorrow? It's decision time as the first week of the Tour de France comes to an end. And 7 days of terrific action, and boy, has the time flown. 105 kilometres still to race here today. 65 miles, and a minute and 27 seconds is the gap from the two leaders to the main pack.
Well, Andre Greipel will be hoping that he can pull himself back to the main field. On the other hand, Cannondale, who've made the decision to set that hard tempo on the front end of the yellow jersey group, I don't think we'll get any help at all from Team Sky. They won't get any help at all from Team BMC, and probably not even from Alberto Contador's team, because those guys are now thinking about the mountains we're going into at the weekend.
Ian Stannard, the British rider, too, in that same Greipel group. Well, 3 minutes 10 seconds and coming down very slightly. Mark Cavendish is in a big group of riders. Furthest behind, the sprint winner of yesterday, Andre Greipel, might well rejoin this yellow jersey group. He's got the British rider Ian Stannard in that group. And the overall gap now, the peloton are only a minute 21 behind the two leaders.
Well, it's the move by Team Cannondale, who are pulling back the two leaders at the moment, who are riding quite steadily at the front end of this race. But behind, sirens are ringing in all of those groups. You've got Cannondale trying to keep the hammer down to make sure nobody comes back. But I have to say, Andre Greipel's team were taking a lot of risks to try and pull themselves back to that large yellow jersey group. And the descent that was being done by Omega Pharma Quickstep of Mark Cavendish, well, I'm certain they'll be starting to nail back the group of Greipel. Now, if those two groups come together, then I think there's a very good chance that they will catch up with the front end of the race.
Well, they've got to cross the gap there. We've got Kittel also back there, the Argus Shimano sprinter who won the first day. So if they've got teammates with them on these flatter roads, they might muster the teams up. But this is the situation here now with Cannondale. Knowing what they've created, they went out to create exactly what has happened. And right now, if they're riding at these speeds, it's going to be very, very difficult as they race into the feeding zone here at Morat-sur-Vebre.
When we went up a long climb for 6 or 7 kilometres and there was no real descent afterwards.
Into the feed zone then, and all bags on board for the hard workers at the front. Not an easy way to eat, is it? So as we look at these riders here, many people ask us what are in those little bags. Well, I think we can show you what's going in those bags from the Garmin Sharp team. This is what they had on stage 5. Power gels, power food, power bars, you name it, they're all in there. It's just fast food energy, of course, and of course, always there's a bottle goes in there as well. And they choose what they want, and the rest. There is a place just after the feed zone where the riders are throwing their bags, by the way, and that's where are swept up later. They're not littering the countryside, as the Tour de France is actually very proud of its green reputation. Lel Kadri, the new leader in the King of the Mountains, but it's not certain yet he'll pull that jersey on by the end of the day. There they are, the Cannondale boys on full cry. Well, they're going to clock through the kilometres now, just on 6 to the sprint point, and that will take them probably less than 6 minutes because it's all downhill to the town.
It's going to be very rapid, apart from the first day when Peter Sagan got caught out in the crashes on the run-in towards Bastia. He was second on stage 2, second on stage 3. His team didn't do a great individual time trial. He was a little bit further back when it came down to the next stage, slipping down to a mere 3rd position before finishing second again yesterday. Talk about Mr. Consistency. That's why his team, Phil, are doing what they can. They're breaking their backs for him here this afternoon, because they know if they can drag this group to the finish, Peter Sagan has got a very, very good chance of winning.
Just watching the rider from Lotto just about skim off here. Moment of desperation as they try to close that gap. It's still at around 2:26 on the computer. They're giving a slightly less advantage on the motorbikes down there, but either way, the risks are being taken as they continue here. And well, that young man, I don't know if he's got the gears for that mountain or not. As we're watching now right across the villages here, well, you know, we're looking at the computer, 74, just over 4 kilometres to go now.
Yep, and they are still lime green, the colour on the front end of this main line of riders. Orica Green Edge must think it's their birthday here this afternoon. Over the last couple of days, they've had to do all of the pacemaking since Simon Gerrans took over the overall lead. Now another team's tactics have given them a little bit of a back seat after what they would have expected to be another hard day of doing all of the pacemaking. Somebody else has come forward with a different tactic.
Long line just behind the race here because they're just hanging on at the speed. 2:29 is virtually locked on now. This is when Cannondale will take it down to the sprint and then decide whether they push on. I think they'll push on because 70 kilometres to go to the finish. It's worth continuing. It gets a little bit hilly again as we get up onto the hills, and they might well distance that chase group once we get onto the small climbs that remain.
And what they will hope is they will break the spirit of the teammates of the sprinters in that group behind. And after you've ridden for an hour and you've been looking at the blackboard at the side of the road saying 2 minutes 30, 2 minutes 30, 2 minutes 30, it starts to eat into your brain and say, why am I suffering like this? We're not going anywhere. We're not starting to break into the advantage that the peloton has at the main field. And then all of a sudden the body turns off and you say, well, we'll come back and do it another day.
And all of a sudden they're 10 minutes behind. But sometimes, for no reason, the peloton slows and you suddenly realise you're catching up. Then the final effort gets you there. Still sticking on 2:30 at the moment. Speed just on 60 kilometres an hour going down the hill, about 37 miles an hour for these riders as they race towards the town of Vienne-Pierre-Ségade.
Well, the race information is coming across now saying it's around about the 2 minutes and 10 seconds mark. So it's slowly but surely grabbing back. But the question is, will the teams of the sprinters still be able to keep their morale high and keep the pressure on to try and pull back that leading group? Or will Team Cannondale start to weaken because they are only one team, whereas behind them there is a trio of teams forming this alliance with the same goal: bring back the yellow jersey group.
Well, we'll wait and see which timing is correct. At the moment, our computer and the GPS agree at 2:33, but we've never seen one as low as 2:10, which the race radios are putting out. They have a more archaic system of checking points along the road and just stopping their watches. But 2:33 is what we will have to stay with at the moment, and these boys, I'll be happy at that, because if it is going out to 2:33, it was 2:30 a minute ago. They are losing ground now, and the riders from Cannondale are really going to be licking their lips. They're just on under 2 kilometres now from the sprint in Vienne itself, and the hard work of Cannondale is about to pay huge dividends here for Peter Sagan.
Well, the way they're riding, they don't have to worry too much, Phil, about leading out the sprint for Peter Sagan, because that's what they've done for the last 40 kilometres since we crested the second category climb. We've covered 2 climbs out on the course today, but this is the important thing for Peter Sagan and for Team Cannondale currently. But after they've gone through the point, I would wonder whether or not there's going to be any challenge at all to Peter Sagan here, because most of the other riders in this competition are a long way behind.
Here's the scramble now for the finish, Paul. We're 500 metres from the line here now. Wait for Peter Sagan to come out of the shadow of his teammates. Rightly so. None of his team, none of the other riders are going because they're not involved in the competition. This is a private battle at the moment. And Sagan is in second wheel. He's picked up one rider there from Lotto, I think it is. It could be Vacances Soleil down there. Can't quite see it from the helicopter. But Sagan is going, and anybody who tries to outsprint Peter Sagan are on a loser, I think. Just looks over his shoulder. 20 points. A lot of hard work by his team, but the result was there. 20 points for Sagan.
Yeah, it looked very much to me like the shape of Juan Antonio Fletcher, who came across the line in second position there. So right now there's still a long, hard chase to go to the streets of Albi.
We're just watching here the peloton now going down through the trees here, and that's the reason for our slight picture breakup, interfering with our signals. Wouter Poels is number 201, second man up here, and we've got just there the leader of the Française des Jeux team sitting there near the back, Bryce Feyou.
Well, this is the front end of the main field going through to get themselves at the maximum point. In fact, it would appear now, Phil, that they have decided with Team Cannondale to actually switch off, because they've turned the responsibility back over to Orica Greenedge to keep the tempo riding. That could be a change in the wind for the group behind, because if they've now decided they're not going to ride like maniacs all the way to the finish line, I think we could see a return into this group for the sprinters.
Yes, interesting that, because they've got 2.5 minutes. It's been pretty consistent at 2:33. Now we'll see if it goes up or down here. No real reason for the riders from Orica Greenedge to just keep the pressure on. You're right, it was Fletcher Paul got second, and Sabatini, Simon Clark, Geraint Impey as they continue through the sprints there. So let's have a look at those results again, and then we'll show you the overall. Peter Sagan got the 20 points. Juan Antonio Fletcher decided just to be an intruder there to take 17. Sabatini third, and then came the boys from the Orica Greenedge. This is the new overall standings. That's a huge jump, you see. 20 points for Sagan, nothing for Greipel, Cavendish, Christoph or Kittel, all behind. So a big coup there for the champion of Slovakia. That was the plan. Now they seem to assess that they don't want to push on. He's called his team off the front. They'll be happy. Here's the peloton coming through, and there's no sprint, of course. There's no points available, so they've just got to get on with the chase in hand and rue the moment they were dropped on the climb. But it's a double dose of entertainment for the crowd here in Vian, that's for sure. All of the Lotto Belisol driving so quickly at the front. The others are having trouble keeping up with them just now. So they haven't given up yet. They are still trying to get back before the big sprint of the day in Albi. This is the team. Greipel is in that group. Now it's been a little bit of a push off the front here. Interesting. This is this looks like the figure of Jan Bakelants again going clear, the man who stole the show on day 2 of the Tour de France. 68 kilometers to go. Free of the responsibility of the maillot jaune. So it is Jan Bakelants, and he's got 2 riders, one Europe car, one Euskaltel, trying to get on terms with him here. Looks like it might be the slight figure of Cyril Gautier, gritting his teeth, who's trying to reach him. So Bakelants is clear, about to be joined by Cyril Gautier. And then we're going to get 3. Now this is an interesting move, and this is going to cause a reaction sooner or later from the bunch, which might well cause the demise of that chase group of the sprinters. 67 kilometers to go, 2 small climbs to come. There'll be no chasing from the group of Team AG2R, because they can lose those few points. It means that Blel Kadri would pull on the polka dot jersey tonight.
Well, there'll be a big battle when we come down to those final 2 climbs of the day, but those final 2 climbs are in the latter part of the event, and I'm certain that Blel Kadri will see whether or not he can get the acceleration coming out of the group.
Well, we were just talking about Jan Bakelants, Paul. You were saying since he led the Tour for 2 days how the contract offers are poured in for next year. Well, quite clearly he's still got himself a fresh pair of legs, because he's off on the road again.
Well, this is the right moment to hit, to try and get a small breakaway to format, especially if you had a long, hard chase for 40 kilometers. Then all of a sudden, everybody cuts off the effort at the front end of the main field, and it's a good time to try and launch a counter move. Cyril Gautier is the one rider who's come across this gap. The other guy is Juan Jose Oroz from Euskaltel Euskadi.
3 strong workhorses if they can get it all together and settle down here. Gautier's been on the attack a number of times, and he's still fairly well up in the King of the Mountains, and he might be the man who's sent up there to try and spoil the party for Blel Kadri.
But now all of a sudden Cannondale have decided to come back and keep this pressure on, but they're not quite riding with the vigor that they had just a few moments ago. They had that one goal in mind, to survive up until the sprint point so they could get maximum points per Peter Sagan. Now it's a slightly different ball game.
Looking at the face here of Andre Greipel and Mark Cavendish, I'm wondering if they're thinking we may not be getting back today. The clock is not indicating any return really of them. It's still on 2.5 minutes. That is Mark Cavendish. Jerome Pino riding up front with him. This is Juan Jose Oros. And working very hard at the front. They're having a real job here to catch up. At least he's going to wait for them now, Jan Bekelants from Radio Shack. And then if they'll get 3 of them together. 15 seconds the spread between the peloton just behind. With a reaction like this coming as it has, it might well see the sprinters washed away today. It looks like the bridge is complete and they've come together just on 40 miles from the finish. There's the peloton. So 3 riders in the lead. Jan Bekelants at the front there, who wore the yellow jersey for 2 days in the Tour. Now with a 33-second lead, the peloton are not going to let this breakaway get too far up the road. So the chase will continue. We'll take a break and then we'll see if the race is showing any signs of regrouping today. In the proximity of Orica Greenedge, they're slowly filtrating through now, and here they go. They're starting to set at the pace. They are now desperately concerned. The secret, as Paul Sherwin always tells me, is not to panic at this stage of the race. But I think with 48 kilometres to go and a new leader on a different team, I'd be panicking.
Well, there was no need to panic. The best thing to do is to keep as much firepower in the team as possible and make your effort and dose your effort over the right period of time, which is why I think Orica Greenedge allowed Team Cannondale to do most of the pacemaking. Once they felt the point that Team Cannondale was starting to weaken a fraction, that's when they said, right, now is the moment for us to send forward reinforcements and lift up the pacemaking. One guy who actually got caught out there by that acceleration of the Cannondale team there, Phil. In fact, I can see that Thomas Voeckler is in that back group. He'll be looking for a stage a little bit further down in the Tour de France to try and leap out of the pack. But this has been one of the most dramatic chases the sprinters have had to make to try and get themselves back into a professional bike race.
Yeah, I admire the way they stuck to the guns. They really have not eased up at all day. But unfortunately, neither is the main peloton driving on. And that says a lot for these 3 boys to still be prizing open the odd second every kilometre or so. And so this is a real flat-out chase across the department of the Tarn for sure.
Yes, well, this is Cyril Gauthier. As we look here over the last 6.5 kilometres, the leaders covered that distance in 12 minutes and 8 seconds compared to the peloton's 12:35. And that was an average speed of between 19 miles an hour, 19.9 for the leaders and 19.2 for the peloton. And the wattage difference between them, the leaders putting out 435 watts average to a 410 watt average for the peloton, which is a fair amount of power. It just goes to show that the pressure has been on, and it's been like that for the majority of the last 2 hours of racing. As we get into the last half an hour of racing, you can expect that wattage to creep up to around about the 500 watt mark.
Well, beautiful scenery of the peloton of the Tour de France, and they're concentrating on the chase now. The chase has changed a little bit with the arrival at the front of Albacini, the strong Swiss rider on the Orica Greenedge. He's been put up now to try and get this gap down a little bit, which is still hovering on 1 minute all the way to the finish. 1 or 2 little tricky twists now as we race off this range of mountains down towards the finish. Overall in the King of the Mountains, by the way, Kadri has 12 points, Pierre Roland 11, Simon Clark has 5 in 3rd place, which means that we have the jersey changing for a 3rd time in the King of the Mountains competition. Blair Kadri pulls on Polkadot tonight. Now he's got to honour that tomorrow on some of the highest mountains of this year's Tour de France.
Well, as you said a little earlier, Phil, the average speed of the 4th hour of the race was 46 kilometres an hour.
Yep.
That's pretty close to 29 miles an hour average speed. It just goes to show how difficult this chase has been and how heavy the race has been this afternoon.
Yeah, and it's given the race at nearly a 40 kilometre an hour average for the whole day, which when you consider the terrain here, that is a tough one. And it was all because Cannondale wanted to be rid of the sprinters and make it a little less complicated for Peter Sagan down at the finish. But you know, they have been working a lot at the front. They may not have the usual energy for the big lead-out train when we get into Albi. Holding on to that 46 seconds. So Jan Bakelants is still dreaming of yellow again tonight when we get down to Albi, and we're inside 20 miles to the finish this time.
That lime green colour all over the front end of the yellow jersey pack.
It's painful to watch this. They're getting them back, but inch by inch. And 4.5 kilometres to go now to the finish. And Cyril Gauthier is the rider on the front in the Europe car colours. His team captain today, Thomas Vauclair, behind in the back group, which is now over 12 minutes behind, with Mark Cavendish and Andre Geipel as well.
Well, Cannondale have done, I have to say, a phenomenal job here this afternoon, Phil. We're looking at close to 110 kilometres on the front for the team from Italy. Although Cannondale being an American sponsor, Cannondale is nowadays owned by a Canadian group. But a little bit, there's a little bit of a problem going round the corner there. They took a nasty little line, but now they've managed to straighten themselves up.
Well, they got away. See, this they're virtually team time trialed away, and they got themselves confused, completely, almost touched the back wheel of their own teammates. They've reorganised themselves, disrupted just a little bit.
Now they've come into the Avenue Gambetta. They're inside of 4 kilometres to go. It's nice and straight now. There's only a couple of little kinks in the run-in towards the finish. And the main field, look at that mass of riders spread all over the road, as Bakelants will not lay down arms this afternoon. He still wants to keep hammering at the front. But now you can see a slightly different change coming forward. Different riders, different teams moving to the front of the pack, starting to feel that little bit hungry for a possible stage victory.
That's got the riding style of Jens Voigt moving up on the right of our picture here. It looks as though he's trying to move up. Boysenhagen is still in a very good place. This is the catch, and it's going to come at 3 kilometres to go as they get to the banner. It's a virtual catch. But what a terrific ride by Jan Bakelants. There'll be more professional contracts pouring through his letterbox, I think, for next season. 3 kilometres to go, and the main part of the Tour de France is all together without the big sprinters. But there's still one here, and there's another one in Boysenhagen.
Yes, watch out for Boysenhagen. You can see him. There are 2 riders from Team Sky moving to the front end of this main field this afternoon. He's a fair way back up into about 5th position is Peter Sagan. This is a slight left-hand sweeper at 2.5 kilometres to go. There's only one bend now. That's once they've crossed the River Tarn at 2 kilometres to go. There's a sweeping right-hand bend, and then it's a long straight boulevard of around about 1.5 kilometres to the line. And right at the end of that very long line, they will see the banner across the road.
Still Team Cannondale try to grit their teeth. It's been a very, very fast race. They've led it virtually all of the way for Peter Sagan. Can Sagan finish it off? We're heading to cross the Tarn River here that creates this beautiful gorge outside of Albi. Coming up to 2 kilometres to go, and the field are all queuing up now behind.
Well, they're just about to go over the Pont Vieux, the old bridge over the River Tarn. And there you can see it. It's a magical bridge that these riders will now know. There's 1.5 kilometres to go. 151 metres the bridge, supported by 8 magnificent arches, and the peloton is safely over.
Round the back of the cathedral, and I noticed the Polish rider Kwiatkowski moving right up in his white jersey. He has been sprinting very well as he's just tucked in behind the Amiga rider.
That is Sylvain Chavanel, his teammate, who's moved right up there to look after his teammate Kwiatkowski, as they're still Cannondale have control of the front end of the main field. Boassenhagen is moving up through the middle there. That's him in the dark blue jersey. They'll all be fighting for the wheel of Peter Sagan.
As one by one now the Cannondale boys swing off as the finishing line approaches. The last one will try to take Peter Sagan to the line, but what's left of the sprinters are trying to get onto Peter Sagan's wheel here. Under 1 kilometre to go.
Moving up into about 7th position is the blue jersey of Boassenhagen, but also in the mix there is the World Champions jersey of Philippe Gilbert. It is a good ride for him today, because let's not forget he's 31 years of age, and what a birthday present that would be. Stuck in the middle there in the green jersey, though, is Peter Sagan, just waiting for the moment to move.
as they try to go to the line here. Now Sagan is finding himself in a little bit of a mess as they try for the sprint here. This is a very difficult sprint for Peter Sagan to move out of. He's still on a teammate's wheel, trying to find his way through the traffic, and he's through on the inside now. Sagan is on the inside, kind of coming forward. Now he's got the break. Now it should be a formality as he opens up for the line. The last teammate here. Sagan again is still being pushed away from this as Keselowski starts to go, and Degenkolb on the right. And now Sagan comes. Degenkolb on the right. Sagan comes, and he comes over the top. Job done. Cannondale have had the most magical day in the Tour de France. They have done everything right, and he's finished it off.
Well, you cannot take anything away from Cannondale this afternoon. If any team deserved to win that here this afternoon, it was that team there, with a brilliant time performance by Peter Sagan coming out of the gap at the last possible moment. He stayed nice and calm there, almost got caught out by Degenkolb, the other spare sprinter for Team Argos Shimano, but what a move by Degenkolb.
He's pointing to Cannondale, and that means his team in this case. They did so well for him today. My goodness me, they never came off the front since they split the field on the climb of the Col de la Croix de Muni. And that all happened 94 kilometres into a 200-kilometre race. What a brilliant day for that team.
Well, looks very much as if the Saxo Tinkoff rider who came across the line in third place there were Daniele Bernati, followed up to the line. I tell you what, the young Polish rider Kwiatkowski did a great performance to come over the line in fourth, just edging out Edvald Bosenhagen.
So confirmation then, he's won by a good length when he got it right, and Degenkolb in third place there at the moment, so in second place rather on the photo finish. And Bernati, that's the first time we've seen Daniele Bernati push his way into the result, and he got third. Meanwhile, out on course, the sprinters who tried so hard for a long way to repair the damage caused by the Col de la Croix de Muni, and as a result are still riding in, and I think will be for probably the next 13 or 14 minutes. Let's show you now the confirmation of the stage result. The transponders have all kicked in, and Peter Sagan wins today in almost 5 hours. His team led for 4 of them. Degenkolb gets his first crack at shooting for gold. Daniele Bernati, same for him. Chimolai got fourth in the end, and Edvald Bosenhagen probably will be a little bit disappointed with fifth, but he got a bit crowded on that finishing straight. Gavazzi sixth, Galopin seventh, Arthur Vichot, the champion of France, sprinted into eighth, and Sylvain Chavanel in 10th place. 12th place for the yellow jersey, Daryl Impey. The 0:00 of his time losses means he keeps yellow for South Africa and Orica Green Edge tonight, and goes into the Pyrenees now as the leader of the Tour de France. I'm just watching there. He was speaking to his team in Italian. He speaks Italian pretty well. He says, thank you, thank you, thank you, great, as he got ushered away. Well, it was, I thought for a moment he'd blown this, but he came out of the pack, and once he was clear to sprint, he was so much faster than anybody else. Degenkolb on the right kept coming. We'll be back with the podiums and the interviews after this. Well, as we look at the peloton, this opening 7 days of the Tour de France really has been a story for Australia. The team in their second tour is Orica Green Edge, and boy, have they had a great time. Let's have a look a little bit more at that. This is going to be a very special Tour de France.
Pay attention, guys. I know mentally a lot of you guys were switched off because it's been quite easy the last 30-40 minutes. Be prepared for a very fast final today because the stage has been so easy, but stay concentrated, guys.
Well, I think they're setting up for Simon Gerrans, who's tucked in there at the moment as they open up for the line now. Simon Gerrans is now going to win his first stage of the Tour de France.
I'm really happy to have fantastic legs and finish off some great teamwork to win the stage for Orica Green Edge.
Guys, we're 3 seconds off the fastest time. Very good. This is where it's going to be one into this headwind. Sprint it in, guys. Sprint it in. Let's go all the way. Everyone's on. Let's go all the way, all the way.
They have done it by 0.75 of a second.
Fastest time. Guys, we are the fastest time by under 1 second.
And the next maillot jaune will be an Australian, Simon Gerrans.
I think what really showed today is how close we all are as a team. We all give 100% for each other. To take the yellow jersey and be the leader of the Tour de France is something pretty special.
How's your body, Tony? All right? Yeah, I'm good, Peter. Thanks very much.
Simon Gerrans, his second day in yellow.
Keep the yellow jersey is the most important again, so that's our main focus.
And it depends on the position as to who will carry the next yellow jersey for the team.
And that's marksmanship sort of man. That's why I said that's what
Here it is, the first ever maillot jaune to be worn by a South African.
Words can't actually describe what I'm feeling right now. You know, to be one of the guys to write history in the books for South Africa, it's a magical moment. It'll change my life forever.
Daryl, you've done it for us. You made us proud, sir. You made us proudly South African man. We're so happy to have you in the yellow jersey. Great job, great job.
But for now, it's all about Daryl Impey here as he comes up for his second yellow jersey.
That was a great feeling. It felt like I was floating today.
It has been an incredible start for Orica Green Edge at this 100th edition of the Tour de France.
Yes, the first ever Australian-backed team to ride in the Tour de France. They did that last year. This year, for the first week, it's been their Tour de France. The two sporting directors in the car there, reduced to screams and tears, were two former riders of the Tour themselves, Neil Stevens in there, as well as Matt White. Well, today is another day, of course, and I think they probably aren't expecting to continue into the second week of the Tour quite as well as in the first week, but we'll see. Because Daryl Impey has said this morning he hopes that the yellow jersey will give him wings to fly up these mountains. This is our first tackling of the major mountains of the Tour de France today. We have more to come, but one thing is for sure, all the roads end up in one place, and that's Paris. Perched high atop a cliff, the castle of Puylaurens originally belonged to the Abbey of Saint Michel de Coutzat. Formerly the property of the Cathars, it was ceded to the French in 1255. And though momentarily taken by Spanish troops in 1635, it was given up and back to the French as part of the Treaty of the Pyrenees in 1659. Featuring an elaborate courtyard, a keep and towers, the castle is noted for its defences, as many have sought its refuge in times of conflict. It was listed as a historical monument by the French Minister of Culture in 1902, and dare I add, 1 year before the first Tour de France. As we now join the Tour de France here, the four riders, they've had a little bit of attacking, but they've all come back together here. Just inside 30 miles now, as the four leaders have been put under pressure by moves by largely the champion of Holland, Johnny Hogeland, but it looks as though they've all come back together.
Yeah, but what is more of concern to me, Phil, as we look at the main field from the helicopter here, is the long line of riders stretching out of the back. And I can tell you from experience, having been in a situation like this, those guys are the guys who are the men of the flatlands. They're the sprinters, if you like. They're the 100-metre athletics runners compared to the 10,000-metre runners. And they are just holding on here to try and stay in contact with this group for as long as possible. Because if you get dropped on a stage like this, it's very, very easy to get eliminated from the Tour de France. You have to finish every stage within a certain percentage of the winner's times. and it's very easy to lose a huge chunk of time on the mountains like this. So far, the leaders have covered the last few kilometres, 15, about 10 miles. They've covered that in 21 minutes, whereas the main field have covered it a lot quicker in 20 minutes and 59 seconds, which means that the main field are travelling around about 26 miles an hour. They're producing a lot more wattage as well, at 384 to 356 with the leaders.
So in that last 9 miles, they've pulled back just 42 seconds on these 4 riders, but the climb is coming slowly but surely now. 46 kilometres from the finish. The climb tops out at 29 kilometres from the finishing line today. To break out the shadow of those trees, the sun is going to feel pretty warm right now, and when they get up to the finish at Axe, it is quite exposed. Everybody enjoying a lovely warm occasion up at the finishing line now. Team cars going through. Riders here look to me as though they are unhitching at the tempo. I can see Michael Shaw in trouble down the back, the champion of Switzerland on the right. He had a crash a couple of days ago, and maybe he's feeling effects. And normally he's a very strong workhorse for TJ Van Garderen, and in particular Cadel Evans. Now this particular rider's got a problem.
Well, this is one of the riders from Vacansoleil. It's Juan Antonio Fletcher, who's just stopped at the side of the road. He's a seasoned professional. It won't panic him too much. He'll realise that he can use the convoy of cars to slipstream his way back up to make contact with the main field once again. But not a lot of fun to have a flat tyre on the early slopes of a climb.
It is not, is it? Well, he's got away quickly. He should get back into the peloton for the moment at least. These are the leaders here. And at the front is Christophe Riblon there. I think we can show you something there, because this happened moments ago. Christophe Riblon on the front looking back at Johnny Hugelin, nobody helping him. He's saying, look, come and give me a hand, do something. Well, in fact, this infighting is costing them their lead. It's coming down quite quickly now. 1 minute 19 is the gap. Riblon's done most of the work in this breakaway. He's done most of the pushing at the front, 38%. They say if you ride in the slipstream of the other riders, you're saving 30% of your energy. Hugelin's been the second big worker there, and Mollard just behind him, and Marine, the first time in the Tour, he's been doing the least. But one thing is for sure, this breakaway is not going to win the race today. So as we continue on here, we've seen a great opening week by the Australian Orica Green Edge team. This man yesterday took the lead in the King of the Mountains. You see, everybody has reason to dream. Sherman was explaining earlier, a born climber can keep a steady rhythm and then kick it up a notch, and the non-born climbers can't match those accelerations.
Well, that's the tactic of Team Sky. You see, Team Sky, we noticed last year, what they would try and do would be to asphyxiate the climbers by setting such a steady tempo at the front that the climbers were put into a kind of oxygen debt. But a pure climber like Quintana here, he's at home in these mountains. As you said, Phil, he comes from the region of Boyacá in Colombia. He was already born at 3,000 meters. That means that when he used to go training, he used to climb from 3,000 to 4,000 meters. He's not even got out of bed at this kind of pace currently.
Well, there's the face and Robert Gessing saying goodbye, I can't handle that, as we pass the flags of Norway. This is a mount from Colombia here. Nice little drink, and he gets all of the applause. This is Vogler, who's now been dropped here. He's even behind now the yellow jersey. So he tried, but he cracked.
Well, he did, but this was a stage that he thought, with his deficit of 16 seconds in the overall standings, they'd give him some freedom. But that was discounting the renaissance of a brand new Colombian climber coming to the fore.
Witnessing in this 100th edition of the Tour de France, a rare talent emerging. You're right. That's Team Sky. They're just not panicking yet as they try to guide Chris Froome to yellow. Well, there's the yellow jersey. It's a sad sight when you lead the Tour de France, but he's finding the other face of the Tour today. He'll hang on as long as he can and try to limit his losses and maybe chase back to some of the groups on the way down. Now there he is, Nairo Quintana, this man from Colombia. He's 23 years of age, this rider. He's had 9 wins since he turned professional, and he only turned pro last year. He won the Tour de l'Avenir in 2010, and that's the amateur version of the Tour de France. It's only over 2 weeks. This year he won the Vuelta of Pays Basque, the Tour of the Low Countries, and he won it after he won stage 4 of that race. Now let's see, he's racing now for a white jersey. He's 3rd place in the young riders standing, but if he keeps on like this, he's going to be in white or maybe even yellow tonight, because at the moment the Sky team are not reacting to this attack. Let's go back to see what Steve Perino's got. Steve.
Well, we're currently immediately next to Ryder Hesjedal. Was hurting about 5 minutes ago. Looks like he's fighting his way back. Of course, we know that it is the 6th rib down that he fractured. None of his movements suggest that he's in rib pain, but boy, he is suffering back here. About 100 yards now behind the yellow jersey.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, that's the Canadian rider, the first ever Canadian to win the Tour of Italy last year. And like so many riders here, riding with broken bones. He has a cracked rib. Nothing they can do about it, and he's trying desperately to stay in the Tour de France. That's what's most important. Look at this, the catch is coming. Here it is Christophe Riblon now, and look at the smooth pedaling 23-year-old just crossing the mountain towards the leader. This is an incredible performance by Nairo Quintana, and now Riblon's seen him. Well, we're definitely seeing the emergence now. Taking a bottle casually, as you like to think this man had ridden 10 tours. Robert Gesing has gone back to the peloton now, blown away. And that leaves just 2 riders up front now, and they're shortly, and I suggest momentarily, are going to be together. Here they come, and it's happened with 5 kilometres or 3 miles still to climb.
Well, if you look at the face of the Colombian rider in 2nd position, soon to be in 1st position here, he's not showing any emotion at all. He's a phenomenal rider. Looks across at the Frenchman and says, come on, let's keep going together. But the question mark to me is, can the Frenchman stay with this Colombian rider once he starts to make the big accelerations?
Well, did you see the face on him? Poker, it doesn't enter into it. He just pointed to his back wheel, sit there, wait for me, do as you're told. 47 seconds, the gap to the peloton. Team Sky will be worried about this man's demonstration today, that's for sure, and so will Alberto Contador's team. Chris Froome, 4th in line behind his team here at the head of the peloton. Because this man is riding his own private Tour de France at the moment, and he's gone. He's opened up the gap. He has gone away. He's now on his way. We were just going to take it to a break, but how can we? This man is making a break of his own now, as he now leads the Tour de France towards the summit. If he gets the gap, he's got to go down the other side and then back up the other side to the finishing line. He could be the next leader of the Tour de France, and believe me, that was not anticipated before the start today. Christophe Riblon, who's led for most of the day and led over this mountain the last time we climbed it in 2010, has now been dropped by the new find in the world of professional cycling, the 23-year-old Nairo Quintana. Free to fly now, and he's got just over 4 kilometres to the top of this mountain. Well, there he goes, stamps on those pedals. It's not often you see a rider have to almost use his brakes to get round a hairpin bend going uphill, but this guy is flying just now. Well, we will take our break now so that we're back in time to see them over the top of the summit. Wait a minute, back to the peloton. This is Pierre Rolland, who's putting in a move for Europcar. He was the king of the mountains. And that is a look back to what has just happened moments ago. The dizzy heights as we climb the Col de Payerne here, and Robert Gesing, who was up front a moment ago, has now been dropped by a dwindling bunch, which there's not too many riders left in that group now. 15 to 20, no more than that. Still in that group is Cadel Evans, though, Alessandro Valverde, Alberto Contador, Chris Froome. They haven't been dropped yet, but they are on the defensive as this man heads to the summit.
is about to get caught by the front end of a charging main field. I haven't yet seen Andy Schleck, so that's quite a good piece of information to figure that Andy Schleck has probably survived so far. Alberto Contador is still in this group. He's got Michael Rogers, the Australian, in him for help. But we've still, Phil, once we crest this climb, we've still got another climb to go.
We have indeed, but this is the highest point of this year's Tour de France, and because of it, this man here could be in for the richest payday of his life, because there is a 5,000 euros additional prize, the Souvenir Henri Desgranges, the man who founded the Tour de France. And it looks to me as though Quintana is not going to be caught before the top of this climb. There's the snow surviving on the north face. Kennog still setting the pace here. Richie Porte right behind him. Froome curled up all over his bike there with two teammates trying to keep him in touch. Alberto Contador not much further down the line, but take a look at the size of that peloton now. Not very big, is it?
No, in third position there, the gangly figure with the white sunglasses in third place is Chris Froome, the man who many people dub as the favourite for today. Locked onto his wheel is Alejandro Valverde, very happy with the fact that he's got his teammate Nairo Quintana up front, putting pressure on Team Sky. The next line of riders in the blue and yellow will contain Alberto Contador, the winner of the Tour de France on 2 occasions. I can see a red and black jersey there of BMC Racing. It looked to me like the Longines figure of the American TJ Van Garderen.
Interesting this, but the increased tempo by the peloton catching up with Igor Anton again. Well, as we look here at the leader going up to the cheers of the crowd, this is to the rear of the race here. That's Andreas Kleuden in trouble, and it looks to me as though we have another problem here, because that is TJ Van Garderen, number 39. This is moments ago, has been dropped by that peloton on the climb. So only Cadel Evans, I think, is left there now for Team BMC. Look at the crowd on the Tour de France today. This is the first big mountain, the biggest of them all, and they've come here to witness a new find in cycling in Nairo Quintana. Let's go inside the race with Steve.
We are just approaching TJ Van Garderen. I can tell you about one switchback below is the yellow jersey, which is about 2 switchbacks below Sky, and they're literally right over my head. It is so steep here.
Well, the pacemaking is absolutely sensational by this youngster, Peter Kennog, in his first Tour de France, as he drags up the favourite, Chris Froome, towards the summit here. Well, Van Garderen has gone, Paul. He's unhitched on this climb too, so it looks as though Team BMC and now must rely heavily on Cadel Evans. But did you notice, still in that group is Andy Schleck.
Andy Schleck, yes, number 41. He's halfway down the group. He's looking very comfortable. You just see the 41 there in the middle, the red, white and light blue stripe across. Andrew Talansky is also in this group, the young American rider wearing number 178. He's sitting on the back. But the man who is lighting up the roads of the Tour de France today, 23 years of age, from Boyacá in Colombia, is looking at 1 kilometre to go to the summit. 5,000 euros the prize over the top. That's about $7,500.
As he heads up through this corridor of noise, we are witnessing a new climbing sensation in the Tour de France. First time he's ever been here. And straight ahead on the next little rise amongst the snow there is the summit of the high spot of the Tour, the Col de Pailla. And isn't it fitting that the newcomer, the best climber we've seen in years developing, is going to win?
Well, it casts my mind back, Phil, to the 1980s, and you think about the climbers like Lucho Herrera and Fabio Parra. That was when Colombia dominated these Grand Tours, especially in the big climbs. Whether it was the Tour de France or the Vuelta a España, they produced some magnificent climbers. This is part of a new breed, and I would say over the last couple of seasons, we have really seen the renaissance of Colombian cycling on the international circuit.
And with this victory alone on the top of this first climb, the 25 points will give him the lead in the King of the Mountains. And who would dispute that today? under the banner that says Col de Paillier, the high spot of the Tour. He's gone over the top. His face telling us he's hardly out of breath. This is Pierre Rolland, who's still staying clear of the peloton. That's a good second place. And in fact, having just awarded the King of the Mountains lead with Rolland taking 20 points for second, he will hold on to the lead briefly. What will happen on the next climb, though?
Well, it'll all go down to the final climb, and the final climb, as a first category climb, will have its points doubled. There's 20 points for the final climb of the day, which is a first category climb. But this man has just gone over the summit, 30 seconds adrift. Now look down into the valley before. That is below. That is where we have to dive down to right now before starting the final climb of the day.
Igor Anton, is he going to hold them off just to get third place? I think he will. And then Peter Kenard, who's done an absolutely sensational round of pacemaking before Team Sky comes up to the summit as well.
So third place there for Igor Anton. Still no serious response there for the Team Sky riders. I make that 1 minute and 3 seconds over the summit.
So the peloton, some 30 riders strong, will now zip up those racing jerseys, keep the chill air out and descend to the valley below. Tremendous piece of riding there, as we've seen. This is Jean-Christophe Perrault, number 81, as we go up with the leader now, getting into his streamlined position. Expect speeds up to 60 miles an hour down here as we start the descent inside the race again with Steve Perino.
Well, Phil, that's exactly my question. Right now I'm behind TJ Van Garderen. How fast can you go if you are mixed up inside the caravan and not out in front like our leaders right now? I mean, it is a mess in here. You have maybe 20 feet of road. If you've got cars to navigate, no way you can keep up with the pace being set at the front when they have the whole road to work with.
Don't even try to do it, Steve, because the bicycles will outrun you every time as we now hit the high speeds here, ending up to 60 miles an hour. Now the big chase is on Paul. The Sky team are going to have to try and close that gap down a bit. They've given him a minute start in the run now for the finish at Aix-Trois-Domaines.
Well, he shouldn't lose very much time on the descent because on his own and this group of riders, they will descend here at speeds approaching 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. I remember a couple of years ago the race computer of Thor Hushovd recorded 117 kilometers an hour as his maximum speed on the day.
Well, Cadel Evans is down there. You can see him in those red shorts, but his reliable teammate who finished 5th last year, TJ Van Garderen, has only just topped over the Col de Paillier, so he's going to have to make a bit of a desperate descent down here. And you can see if you don't get it right, you've got to hammer those brakes on those sharp bends.
And I can tell you there is no safety harness in a situation like this as we look at this. And bear in mind, a lot of these guys, they won't know the descent. Rolland goes across there in 2nd place. And I wonder how far behind the American TJ Van Garderen was over the summit of that climb, because if he goes over the top with a 15 or 30 second deficit, he may well be able to make a number of risks to do so.
And it looks as though Quintana is taking 1 or 2 risks here, and he might be losing time because he's not getting his line quite right as he goes around a full right-hander here. And he's gone wide again. He's going into the... They've been out on the saddle now. Not long to go to the finish, but a climb up to the line.
Well, the other disadvantage he has is descent. He's a very lightly built rider. He's only... That's about 130 pounds compared to 70 kilos for some of the other guys.
Long, thin line as the riders continue to race away from the Col de Paillier, heading to the climb of Aix-Trois-Domaines. Tomorrow is an horrendous stage, let me remind you about that, and tomorrow morning it comes to you, note the early time, 6:30 Eastern time. And what will we see of this man tomorrow? Or is his young body giving it all on the road today? And who cares about tomorrow? One thing's for sure, this man is heading to the finish, which is across the valley. This is how he moved clear, and then he topped out on the mountain. So Nairo Quintana races on. We'll be back in a moment. Is still in front, but he's looking a bit shaky on the way down. Certainly not the same man as he was on the way up. There is a chase by about 30 riders, and the gap is coming down. Every time he makes a mistake on these bends, he loses a couple of seconds, and he's at it again here. 20 kilometers to go, 12 miles to the finish, but I'm afraid it's not all downhill. We're finishing back up a mountain today, and the gap is down to 47 seconds. Well, this is Pierre Rolland here, who is currently back in the lead in the King of the Mountains competition with his second place finish over the climb, and one climb still to come. He's the big French hope. He's trying to push on. He's not a bad descender, Pierre Rolland. He should be eating into that advantage of Quintana. But look at this. The Sky team from the United Kingdom are still being led down the charge by one of their young first-timers, Peter Kennog. And it's the way they are descending that he's eating into the lead of the Colombian.
Well, this is Thibaut Pinot, 23 years of age. He's having a little bit of a hard time himself going around these corners. Going downhill is another part of winning the Tour de France, which is extremely important. It's a technique that you can either learn or you'll never pick up.
This will Thibaut Pinot is off the back of that big peloton. Let's go back to Steve Perino.
Well, right now still with TJ Van Garderen. He's now in a group of 8 as they chase on. And Paul, I hope you're correct in that the guys that know what they're doing keep doing what they know, because this descent, we've hit speed 61 miles an hour, and I did get my, oh man, that was close. As I said, it gets a little congested on the road. We just had a rider slide between my moto and the Europe car, and he survived, we survived, and we continue on.
Well, you take it easy now, Steve. Unfortunately, we can't have a camera with Steve Perino as he descends down that mountain, but quite clearly riders are taking risks to rejoin the race before the last climb begins today. Pinot here needs to get back. Well, a little bit of a surprise that Pinot, but he's taking a few risks on the way down this mountain, and he might well bridge the gap before we start the last climb of the day. The last climb of the day, not as hard as the one we've come over. It's approximately 5 miles, the climb to the finish today.
It's got some pretty steep gradients in it, though, where once we start to get onto it, yes, it might only be 8 kilometers, 5 miles long, but as we start, it starts off at a 9.2% gradient. Once they get halfway through the climb, they go to 10.5% gradient. I would think there's a lot of discussion going on with Team Sky to try and figure out what's happening, but you see they've not been rattled. They've kept themselves together as a solid block for as long as possible.
Peter Kennog there continues to drive on, a World Team Pursuit champion on the track last year. And we're watching here the new roadman from Colombia, Quintana. He's beginning to run off that mountain now as he continues down towards the bottom, and there's still no signs of anybody joining him. It's a long way down this mountain. We lose height continually, as we did continually climb for a long time before we actually got to the official mountain. It's a long, steady drop now right down into the valley before we climb out. We don't really get off the climb and descent till we get into the town of Aix itself, and then it's all climb out. Pierre Rolland trying desperately to reach Quintana.
Well, because of the very technical nature of this descent, for the moment he's out of sight, but he's certainly not out of mind. They realize that as soon as we get into the valley and into the Aix-les-Thermes town itself, they will have a chance to see him in their sights, because 40 seconds corresponds to around about 600 meters, so that's not really very far. They would like to try and pull him back before the start of the next climb, because once he gets onto those gradients, it really comes into his domain.
These boys are not now holding anything back here. They're using what they've got left with just 10 miles to run, 16 kilometers. Pierre Rolland is probably 30 seconds back. The peloton are not much further behind, because here they come now, and there's a lot of fight in this peloton. It's the one man, one of the young men, the newcomers to the Sky team in the Tour de France, Peter Kennog, who is still driving on. Once we get to the next climb, I suspect it'll only be left to Richie Porte to marry up with Chris Froome. This is Nicolas Roche here, trying to get back now, the son of Stephen Roche, winner of the Tour de France in 1987. He's been dropped as well, but he might get up to that group.
Well, a quick look at the dam here. This is the Ulor Dam, and formed into a lake back in 1946.
Peloton at 37 seconds. It's yo-yoing it. They are closing in this incredible chase by the 24-year-old Kennog as they are doing their job well. They are closing in, bringing back into play here Alberto Contador as well as Chris Froome. Cadel Evans is here, but his team seems to have imploded today. One by one they've been dispatched off the back, and we're heading towards the next climb of the day. It took Quintana 46 minutes and 55 seconds to climb the 15 kilometers of the Col de Payer today.
Well, the first day in the mountains is always a very good indicator, Phil, of how the big contenders are going to be and how they're going to perform, and that's why they all want to do something. Last year, after the first mountain stage, Bradley Wiggins was in first position overall. Back in 2011, Cadel Evans was in third place overall after the first mountain stage. 2010, Andy Schleck was in second, and in 2009, Alberto Contador was in second. So it's an indicator that the contenders who want to win this race after 3 weeks of racing want to be in a good position coming out of the first mountain stage of the Tour.
Good chase back here, Paul, by Nicholas Roach. He's getting onto the tail again. He really took some risks. He's flown down there, but he has made contact again.
Well, on these kind of technical descents that we're looking at here, if you're a good descender, you're a man who knows how to take the good lines around the corner, like a good motorbike rider, if you like, you can pull back a good minute on a descent of a climb like this, and that's exactly what Nicholas Roach is trying to do at the back. While on the other hand, Quintana, although he went up very, very quickly, he's lost a couple of seconds in a number of these corners on the descent, and he's now only hovering at around about 35 seconds ahead of the group of major contenders behind him, with the Frenchman Pierre Rolland only 24 seconds adrift.
Yes, he's lost approximately 30 seconds since he started the descent to the peloton, being led all of the way by Peter Kennog. They're now saying on the radio it's 35, we're showing 34, and so as they continue to come down, now this goes on for a little bit further yet as we continue to race right down itself.
Well, actually, term when we get it down into there is a place that's been around for a long time. In fact, it was first noticed in the Roman times, which is the Latin for water. And there are 80 hot springs in this thermal town which gush out of the village, and it became very much a very popular thermal resort in the 18th century.
Now, I've got a feeling, Paul, just look at Kennog here. He's going so quick now. He's leaving behind Richie Porte and Chris Froome on this descent. 22 seconds to Rolland, 34 to the peloton. We could have the whole bunch start the last climb together.
Quite possibly, and whether or not the young Colombian rider Quintana has come up with too much youthful enthusiasm on the first big climb of the Tour de France is a question that will be asked in Peter's time. But bear in mind that his teammate Alejandro Valverde has been sitting on the wheel of Chris Froome nice and easily, allowing the Team Sky riders to do all of the pacemaking. To sit in the wheel of a rider in front of you like that, you can save up to 30% of your energy. Just try driving your car down a motorway and get behind a big truck, and you'll find that you'll actually have a much better fuel consumption. A little bit dangerous to do, but a way of proving the point.
Zubeldia is the rider at the back here. He's contacted he's the last man on that peloton just now, as we've gone back up to the front runner here. Tries to stick his knee out, balance his bike as he gets round, quick flick to the left, and then he rides on as fast as he can. He certainly is not waiting for anybody. His plan is to get to that last climb and disappear up it to the finish. There's the main peloton. There were 188 of them. Now there are less than 30. And there's the twists and turns as they run away now from the Col de Payer. As they wind their way down, they still haven't tamed this magical climber from Colombia. There's still a lot of racing to do before we get down to the bottom of the final climb of the day.
Castro this morning, he must have been looking to the horizon to say, look at those snow-capped mountains, I want to get in there, I want the battle to begin. This is the first battle of the war of 3 weeks of the Tour de France, and this man who lived in Kenya at the start of his life and grew up in Nairobi, moved down to South Africa where he discovered the sport of professional cycling, turned to his British citizenship to get himself into the Olympic Games, and now is trying to be the second Briton ever to win the Tour de France.
Richie Porte takes a look at Quintana, checks him out, takes his back wheel. He doesn't need to make the pace anymore now because his team captain has gone up the road here. so he's going to keep an eye on the man from Colombia, while now Chris Froome is out for one reason: to make time, as much time as he can put in the bank on this first day in the Pyrenees.
He just keeps looking down at the gears that he's got in there at the moment. He's opening up a gap all of the time. I currently have that gap at around about 12 seconds. Richie Porte will defend that position now. He'll sit on the wheel of the Colombian rider Quintana. He will not collaborate at all, because as far as Richie Porte is concerned, the most important thing here is for his teammate to get as much time as possible. Cadel Evans, number 31 there. Andy Schleck, number 41. They have been discarded. Well, no, that's Didier just going by there, but Cadel Evans on the back foot this afternoon as well.
Through 5 kilometres still to go to the top here. Cadel Evans suffering badly there now. His whole team imploding today, including Cadel on this final climb up to the finish in Axe Trois Domaines. And look at this now. Richie Porte is sensing he's cupped the rider from Colombia. He's going to see if he's got anything left. It's age, I'm afraid. Richie Porte himself being talked about as a future winner of the Tour de France, but not this year. His job is to help Chris Froome this time, but why not finish second? He's going clear.
Well, if he holds that position on the road, look at the position of Alberto Contador. This is not the fluid climber that we saw win the Tour de France on a couple of occasions, or the Giro d'Italia. He is not in a good position here at the moment, not riding well. He won the Tour in 07 and 09. He's out of the saddle. He's having to stick onto the wheel of his teammate there, Kreuziger.
Now, Chris Froome free to fly now and make as much time as he can here. He's very ungainly on the bike. He's not the best man with a nice position, but he's certainly an effective man when he gets on the climb. This is Cadel Evans losing contact here with Pierre Roland and with Andy Schleck further on up the road. And so he's going further back at the moment. Big time being conceded. Not Andy Schleck, but Didier Laurent. Zubeldia, that was. There is Andy Schleck. Andy Schleck knows his body. He knows that he's not riding at his best form. He's just pacing himself there. This man now, it's all down to him. Totally eliminated the Tour de France today on 4 kilometres still to go.
Well, Phil, just cast your mind back 12 months. This man worked as a lieutenant for Bradley Wiggins. He guided Bradley Wiggins through the mountains, but in the back of his mind, all he wanted to do was attack. He wanted to attack the mountains and see what damage he can do. Today, he's allowed to do that. He's the leader of the team. He wears number 1. This team is the team that dominated the Tour de France last year. And I wonder if Richie Porte can ride across the cap to his own teammate. What a phenomenal performance that would be.
If he saw him coming, I guarantee Froome would wait for him and they'd ride away together. Richie Porte has just waited till he was sure everybody was about finished before he moved forward to endanger his team captain. That's what you've got to do at the moment. If you look at Kreuziger here and Contador, now all they can see is try and conserve a little bit of energy and save time, because Laurens ten Dam is on the back wheel, and normally Laurens ten Dam, the Dutchman, wouldn't be able to hang on to Kreuziger and Alberto Contador.
Well, it's about 12 seconds the difference between Chris Froome here looking over his shoulder to see his teammate Richie Porte, who's in turn looking over his shoulder to see how far back everybody else is in the bike race here this afternoon. 3.6 kilometers to go, 2 miles to the top of this climb.
This incredibly tough bicycle race. These riders are totally committed. Alejandro Valverde here. As he continues through, we've got just one leader, chased by his teammate now, chased by Quintana. Little acceleration here. Now this looks to me as though Laurens ten Dam has just jumped away from Alberto Contador.
Alberto Contador, if you just look at his position, he's sitting right on the front of his saddle. That's an indication he's not got much power left in those legs of his this afternoon. He is on the defensive. He's just happy to sit on the wheel of his teammate Roman Kreuziger.
Well, that's amazing to see, but Contador, not the man that he was for sure. Go further back down the road. And look at the man who won the Tour de France a couple of years ago. Cadel Evans, 31. Pierre Roland, best French finisher, best young rider in the past. All shattered on the climbs, the first 2 climbs of the Pyrenees. And tomorrow, by the way, there are 4 major mountains along the way. And Chris Froome is going to have to defend the yellow jersey.
Well, the mountains are always very, very complicated to understand because we've got a limited number of motorbike cameras out on there, and the pictures brought to us by French television, the host broadcaster, but I can explain to you roughly what's going on. Chris Froome is the overall leader on the road currently. He's got a 31-second advantage over his own teammate, and that is Richie Porte of Tasmania, Australia. Then there's another 10 seconds back to Alejandro Valverde. He is lying in third place on the road, and then the group of Alberto Contador is hovering at outside the 1 minute margin. Contador is losing huge chunks of time.
And now Froome is free to ride here. Let's not forget that those two boys riding in first and second owe the race to Peter Kennog, their young teammate today, who chased down all of the riders who got away and then fell away, and the two top men on the team are showing us why. Froome, the captain, leads the way. The lieutenant is Richie Porte from Australia. He's not that far behind Chris Froome. Between the two of them, they could be going first and second tonight. This is Richie Porte, 2.8 kilometres, not far out, 3 kilometres on the banner to the finishing line. 1.8 miles.
Well, this is Alejandro Valverde, 1:21. He's in third place on the road, and he was hoping this year that he would ride himself up into a position to try and climb onto the podium in Paris. He also goes under 3 kilometres to go to the top of the climb. The King of the Mountains point, by the way, is 1.5 kilometres before the finish of the actual race in earnest, because the last 1.5 kilometres, thankfully for these riders, Phil, is reasonably flat.
This is Andy Schleck a bit further down the mountain. He survived better than most in that group, but he's now a little way behind. The flag of Britain in the background, and it's a British rider heading to the top. He's so full of fight. He's just driving on that bike. He's not struggling in the least. He's suffering in silence, but it's all for the good.
Amazing thing about this rider, Phil, when he started off his international career, he actually represented Kenya in the Commonwealth Games. He rocked up there and convinced them to let him participate in the Commonwealth Games for Kenya. He rode the mountain bike race, he rode the individual time trial, and then he rode the road race as well. He is such a rider with so many different abilities in the body that he's got, but now he's really come to the pinnacle of his career.
Well, Chris Froome, a year ago, not quite to the day, it was Bradley Wiggins who was going into the leader's yellow jersey on stage number 7. Here we are on stage number 8. It's the man who had to follow Wiggins around the Tour de France in second place who's going to pull on yellow tonight. And this, in fact, is Bout Molliner at the back here, 1:64. As we go up to Chris Froome, the leader, 1.6 kilometres very soon. He's going to have to see the best sign in the world when you're leading a stage of the Tour de France. The red triangle in the sky that means 1,000 metres to the end.
Well, that's what he'll be looking for, but before he gets to that point, he will go under the King of the Mountains point and give himself a nice 20 points there. But this man, Richie Porte, as well as the rest of Team Sky, set this up here this afternoon, as they pretty much did 12 months ago. Looking back here at Valverde, he's looking around every corner to see whether or not he can spot the shape of Richie Porte. Well, Richie Porte is now around about 30 seconds ahead of him, but Contador is in all kinds of difficulty on this first climb of the Tour de France.
He can't hold on to his teammate Roman Kreuziger here, who's actually slowed down to wait for him, I think. At the start of the day, Richie Porte and Chris Froome were locked together 8 seconds off the race lead. Now they are first and second on the road, and by the time they get to the top, they'll be first and second on the overall standings.
Just look at the face on Chris Froome. That explains to you what kind of agony he's going through this afternoon, but in a moment that agony will change into joy as he realises the damage that he's done on the first Pyrenean stage of the Tour de France here this afternoon, because from seconds separating the first 15 or 20 riders, tonight it's going to be minutes.
And remember that Richie Porte has saved nothing to get the springboard working for Chris Froome. yet here he is, consolidating his second place on the mountain. Kreuziger here, just cajoling Alberto Contador to try and follow his wheel and conserve time. 1 kilometre to that's the summit, but it's very close to the last kilometre. That's where the points are given for the climb. And there is the kite in the archway, and now Chris Froome will see it. 1,000 metres to a yellow jersey.
And he will not lay down arms until he gets to the finishing line, because it's so important to get as much time as possible. The Tour de France can be decided by seconds, but for Chris Froome, he's on the flattest part of this mountain here this afternoon. He's getting it up into the biggest gear that he's got. He's getting into a time trial position, keeps looking around those corners saying, where is this line? When is this agony going to finish here this afternoon? He's in the middle of those handlebars, taking it around this left-hand bender. Every time he pedals, he gets that little bit closer to the victory and the yellow jersey at the end of the day.
When Bradley Wiggins took the lead, it was Chris Froome who won the stage last year at La Planche des Belles Filles. And now he's going to do it for himself. He's going to win the stage and take the yellow jersey on stage number 8 of the Tour de France. It's 400 metres to go. He's driving on. He knows that every second counts. He won't let himself slow down till he hits the line, as he's now just around the corner from yellow. Now he'll see the finishing lines. He comes through the S's. He comes off a bend into the finish. He'll kick all of the way. Chris Froome, who has started the Tour as the outstanding favourite, has now put himself head and shoulders above the rest of the riders in this year's Tour de France. This is going to be a stage win and a yellow jersey for Chris Froome. And the clock starts to count. How many seconds will it be to his teammate Richie Porte, who can then also expect to be sitting second overall tonight?
Well, Richie Porte, the winner in dominant fashion in the early part of this year of Paris-Nice, did the job as a teammate, and then when he saw everybody else around him was faltering, he too said, well, I'm off to get myself a place in the overall standings too. He is a phenomenal professional bike rider, Richie Porte, finished 7th in the Giro d'Italia at his first attempt, and now he's climbing right up in the rankings with this performance this afternoon.
Always checking to make sure Valverde isn't closing in on him. Almost a minute has gone by since Chris Froome, his team captain, crossed the line. He won't worry about that, because Richie Porte now sits second in the Tour de France.
Amazing performance by him and the team. They really have put pressure. This is Alejandro Valverde just holding on for third position.
Valverde, the outside of a victory, is proving to be the best of the rest here on a different team, and he was almost caught there by, first of all, Bauke Mollema and then Laurens ten Dam.
Well, this is the new team, Team Belkin, sponsor from the United States, electronic accessories, and Contador has been crushed a little bit today, but let's not forget the Tour de France is 3 weeks long. You can have a bad day, but then you can always bounce back.
Yes, 2 weeks to go, and believe me, this is the easy part of the mountains in this year's Tour de France, because there are 3 times as many in the Pyrenees.
There was Nieva coming across the line for Euskaltel-Euskadi.
This is
well, there's Quintana, and he will have got himself a few more points as he went over the King of the Mountains point there, and I think he will be in the white jersey as the best young rider at the end of the day. And just have a look there at the ski resort around here at Assina. A fine battle here this afternoon.
That's where we are, and this is where you base yourself when you use the ski lift to go up onto the slopes in the winter. But right now, this is Rodriguez coming up to the line. No, it's not. He crosses the finish line from Katusha. And these are the riders now who have just about survived. Rui Costa, winner of the Tour of Switzerland, just coming up here. As he makes it up towards the line, look at the time gap. It's 2.5 minutes since Chris Froome crossed the finishing line now. Andrew Talansky coming in with Dan Martin just ahead of him there. They've conceded 2:36, something like that.
Yeah, the other rider in there for Astana was Jakob Fuglsang, and he's going to adopt the role of leader now after the abandon of Jani Brakovic.
Well, what an amazing Tour de France stage that was. Haimar Zubeldia making his way up, 6th in the Tour de France last year.
He comes in something like 3 minutes plus behind, 3:06. One out, this is Kwiatkowski, the white jersey. He'll lose the white jersey. Andy Schleck's kept him in his sights as he comes round the corner as well. Michael Kwiatkowski, been a solid leader in this white jersey throughout since we started. But it'll go to Nairo Quintana now as he hits up the line there. Andy Schleck coming in. Well, he's tried hard today to relive the good old days. He's crossed about 3.5 minutes off. Pierre Rolland tried to play his cards and cracked in the end, and conceding by the end almost 4 minutes. So there's no way now Pierre can win the Tour de France for France. Everybody coming home one by one. This is Nicolas Roche coming home. He did a fantastic chase down the mountain to get back into that big pack. And at the end of the day, he's done a better climb up here to the finish. Still no sign of Cadel Evans. Here he is as we speak about him, but he's conceding a Tour losing 4 minutes 13 seconds there. And unfortunately, TJ Van Garderen, he's going to lose even more. It is an amazing Tour de France this year that everybody just pushed themselves to the limit today. Let's see if we can show you some stage results here. This is the top 5. After 5 hours, Chris Froome wins by 51 seconds over teammate Richie Porte. 1:08 on Valverde of Spain. 1:10 on the Dutchman, Bauke Mollema, and his teammate Laurens ten Dam. He's done the great ride, Laurens ten Dam, to cross the line in 5th place, only 1:16 behind Chris Froome. That's the best ride I would suggest he's ever done in his life. A terrific performance from the Dutchman there to make the top 5 on this very, very difficult opening day in the mountains. Tomorrow is going to be even worse with 4 first category climbs. There's the man who was under the control of his teammate Bradley Wiggins last year, who went on to win the 99th Tour. Now he's free to fly himself, and he's just set himself fair on course. Is the Col de Val-Laurent. The peloton are there, the leaders are already up there, and Simon Clarke is clear on his own now, trying to run away with the race. We've also heard news that the Richie Porte and Peter Kenyuk chase back to their leader's side is down to 1 minute and 22 seconds. But hey, we're now going on the climb. As we look at Movistar here, is this the one that they're going to choose to try and take care of Chris Froome? As we continue on this climb, Thomas De Gendt, this time I don't think he's going to win the climb, Paul. Here he comes back into the yellow jersey peloton from the leaders.
Theoretically, this would be an ideal climb for somebody like Quintana to make the move because of the gradient on it. It kicks up over the first few kilometers to around about a 10% average grade, and that would really suit the Colombian climber. But I think it's a little bit too far from the finish to try and make the move here. If they want to make a move on Chris Froome, I would expect they would want to try it on the final climb of the day, because that's almost, if you like, it's almost like a mountaintop finish, because over the top of the climb, if you've got a minute advantage, you can hold on to that all the way onto the descent, because it's a very rapid descent from La Orquette down into Bagnères de Bigorre.
Now this is now the second group, because they're chasing the individual leader, Simon Clarke. This is de Klerk, Backlund, Roland Bardet and Hejerdal. The king of the mountains there in the polka dot is Roland. News reaching us, it was 1:22, it's gone out now, it's over 1:30 again. The effort by Porte to catch up with his leader as they've come onto the slopes of this 4th climb of the day, I think telling its story there, backing off again.
Yeah, but that's a little bit because of the pressure of this team on the front, the blue jerseys with the M on, Movistar, the Spanish team, the team of Alejandro Valverde. They will do whatever they can to try and weaken Chris Froome. They know he's on his own. They know if he has any kind of problem, mechanical or otherwise, it will be very difficult for him to come back into the race.
Well, there's got to be an attack from Movistar. They've ganged up on the race all day long. They put Cadel Evans on the defensive a little bit earlier on, but Cadel Evans has now got back up to that Froome group as well. Quintana is there, Valverde is there, both on the same team, and they could so easily remove their deficit with a good long attack today and take over the race lead from Chris Froome. Thomas De Gendt passing right through that group now.
Just sitting on the back of the group in the blue jersey, wearing number 178. That's the young American rider in his first Tour de France, Talansky.
It's just continuing to look in that group. I haven't seen TJ Van Garderen. Cadel Evans is certainly there. And the boys from Holland. And now Poort is trying to bridge up on his own now as he pulls away from the other riders in the group. And this is the way it's been all of the time. So whatever his problem was, he seems to have recovered from it. He's trying to make up for lost ground.
Well, this is not for his own account, really, Phil, this afternoon. He's thinking about getting up there to support Chris Froome in the latter part of this race. He knows how important it is to have at least one teammate alongside you, even if it's just for the psychological advantage of knowing I've got one of my mates here with me in this group this afternoon.
Well, this is a huge effort by Richie Porte. He was dictating the pace yesterday in favour of Chris Froome to take yellow. Today he's been in all sorts of bother. It's 1:34 now, the yellow jersey group behind Simon Clark. This is the Orica Green Edge team car trying to reach the lone leader now. And on a climb like this, a little bit narrow at the moment, so the race referee just trying to marshal the cars through.
Well, for the first time, showing a little bit of weakness on Team Movistar. They're about to lose one single man, while in this leading group, one man is also losing contact with his mates. And this, of course, is Ryder Hagedal in the blue jersey.
Yes, begin to suffer a little bit there. Chance to look at the handlebars there of numbers and times to watch. That's Simon Clark, but today he's decided now to push on.
Well, that's a little bit of information that he's got written down there. It will be for him, it'll be the information on where the climbs are, what the distance to the climbs are, as Ryder Hagedal is in a little bit of difficulty here to stay in contact on the steep gradient. He's much more comfortable on the lower gradients when it's around about 5 and 6% the grade. Here, we're looking at 10%. This is the steepest part of the climb.
Well, it looks like Jan Bakelants also is yo-yoing here now on this steep slope of the climb. This is the picture of the Movistar team that picked up the tempo. Just take a look at the Colombian in white, Quintana.
Andrew Talansky in a
Andrew
spotter bother at the back. Well, don't forget, Phil, it's only his first attempt at the Tour de France. He's come here to learn. He will come back in years to come, and he will quite possibly be a contender for the overall. The big names who are in this group that we've identified, Chris Froome is most certainly in that group with Alejandro Valverde, Bout Mollema, Laurens ten Dam and Roman Kreuziger. A little bit further back in the group, we have seen Alberto Contador, Nairo Quintana in the white jersey. He is riding very well. Joaquim Rodriguez, the leader of Team Katusha. Fulsang is in there. Perrault, Cadel Evans, Jose Serpa and David Malacarne.
And Danielson also riding well, but these riders aren't so important now. You can see the time gaps that they have lost here. Jens Voigt's amazing me today in this group. He's been in there. And Castos Viejo, he's a Movistar rider as well. But they're putting the pressure on. The numbers on Movistar are embarrassing to everybody else today. There's so many of them up here. And Valverde is now the rider in second place here. The pressure is going on. Quintana too. Chris Froome put his head down there. Efforts required. And Porte still trying to reach them here. Well, if Porte can continue like this, he might see the tail of some of those riders as they start to crack up a little bit. These are the leaders trying to chase down Simon Clark. So it looks to me as though we're going to see some very serious action on this penultimate climb of the day, the Col de Val-Lerone. Luchon is famous for its spring waters, and believers of its divinity have flocked here for thousands of years. Originally constructed in 1850, the Chambord thermal baths offer visitors a spa and treatment centre containing steam baths which are unique to Europe and features soothing white stone architecture and luscious grounds on which to stroll. We saw Luchon, now we're seeing the mountains around Luchon, and now we're looking at Simon Clark trying to run away with the mountains today and hopefully hang on to the win down in the finishing line at Bagnères de Bigorre. It's not a done deal, believe me. Richie Porte is tickling the back of the convoy now, trying to reach Chris Froome in the yellow jersey. This is Ryder Hagedal, who's come back from the leaders now, and they're picking them up one by one on this climb.
It is so hard, this climb. The clock is saying it's 1 minute and 18 seconds from Chris Froome to the chase by Richie Porte. But if he can just get into those following cars behind the group, that time will quickly come down.
Yeah, well, the advantage he has, Phil, is if he can get to the top of this climb with a deficit of around about a minute, he's a very good descender, and he could bridge a gap of a minute on the descent. Right now, he's getting into what they call the zone. He's completely focused on just one thing, trying to catch the group of the yellow jersey. So at least Chris Froome, who leads this race overall at the start of the day, has one teammate alongside him when we come down to the critical part of the race, which will be the final climb of the day.
Still 4 riders from Movistar are massing at the front of the peloton. They're weakening the riders who have set the pace, but the important members are there. This is Froome continuing to get up towards the tail of that convoy. He's looking like a different rider to what he looked a couple of hours ago on the climb of the Col de Monte. And he knows now that these riders up front are coming away from the Chris Froome group, and he's picking them off.
He's doing a phenomenal job here, Phil. He was helped by his teammates along the Valley Road. He was helped finally by Peter Kenyuk, the rider from the Isle of Man. But once he felt that there was no power left in the group, he said, I'm off. I'm going to ride my own race and try and get across the gap. He's now just 1 minute and 10 seconds behind the yellow jersey group, and he's trying to chase up to a group which is being led by the Spanish Armada. In second position there is Alejandro Valverde. Third position, Nairo Quintana. It's 1 minute and 35 seconds for Clark, who leads this race, back to the yellow jersey group.
20 seconds back to the 3 who are trying to reach him, De Klerk, Roland and Bardet. There they are. You can just see Clark around the corner. Roland would love to be there before Clark and get the maximum points at the top. I'm not so sure he will be. That's the Australian flag fluttering in the breeze as we head up the mountain.
We're just looking at the rider on the left-hand side there, Phil. That's Romain Bardet. He's a first-year rider in the Tour de France, and he really is learning what it's like to ride in the high mountains. Just 22 years of age. It's amazing the number of youngsters that France has got peeping through now in the sport of professional cycling, and so many guys from 20 to 24 years of age. Surely we'll see a French winner in the Tour de France in the next 10 years.
At last, it looks as though we are getting them. He finished 4th in the Route du Sud this year, which is a pretty hilly race down in the south. And so he obviously can climb pretty well. That's the group containing Chris Froome. Cast your eyes up the mountain. Oh dear, don't look at that sign if you're a rider. Val Laurent showing the gradients they are at, and just below the sign you have got Richie Porte inching closer, beginning to pick off the Movistar riders who have been dropped by the group now.
Well, Richie Porte is doing a sterling ride here this afternoon. The 2 riders from Movistar is about to catch and pass are the Costa Rican rider Andre Amador, 122, and Emmanuel Erviti, number 125. They'll look across and say, wow, where did you come from? Because they will appreciate the performance that he's doing to get himself back into the race this afternoon.
And Dan Martin is moving up alongside the shoulder of Chris Froome. At least, I suppose there is an English connection. Dan Martin comes from Birmingham, but he's very much Irish. Chris Froome, who actually is British, but was born in Kenya. And so he is setting the pace. Now, look at this now, as Richie Porte, I think, is sensing the catch. It may not come on the way up, but it's a long descent down to Saint-Laury-Soulon. And it could well be that is where he will get back up alongside Richie Porte. But it's going to be hard now because these boys are building up for the finish of the climb here.
Yeah, they're really starting to turn up the screws. This is Sylvain Chavanel about to pop out of the back end of the group, and that's all because of the interminable pressure that is being applied on the front end of this group by Team Movistar. They want to get the victory for Spain here this afternoon. They're not concerned at all about Richie Porte, but they certainly would not like to see him come back into the fold.
I must say that Chavanel's done a great ride to hang on to these climbers today, but it may be done now. He may well get on over the top as we go down to the last climb of the day. I think he'd be interested in it anyway. He wants that yellow jersey for Paris, but he's been under pressure today. 500 to go.
He's looking very comfortable on his bike. He's not rocking his shoulders a fraction, but that's just because he wants to keep his cadence nice and high. He's using a low gear, keeping his cadence, his pedaling rhythm at around about 90 rhythms a minute. That's an important thing to try and attain when you're climbing on mountains like this. Keep the gears as low as possible with a high cadence.
Bardet, another man who's distinguished himself today, the youngster from France. He's working in that group of 3 with Roland and De Klerk. Clark, he's up to 400 metres to go now. He's very shortly going to see the top of this climb, which is the highest of all of the climbs they've come over today, 1,580 metres, but only by a metre or two. They've been pretty consistent with the heights, the Pyrenees today.
Well, Valverde has given the nod to the team to put the pressure on this group to prevent Richie Porte, who started the day in second place in the overall standings, from coming back into this group. That will allow Alejandro Valverde to move up into second place overall tonight, and his own teammate Quintana will also climb up the standings by a position or two. But Quintana lost a fair amount of time on the running towards the finish yesterday and is more than 2 minutes behind.
Nations flags, but there's plenty for Australia. There's another couple for you as Simon Clark tops out, takes maximum points on the penultimate Pyrenean climb of the day. One more to go before the finish. Now it looks about 2 minutes and 10 at the moment, 2:14 back to Richie Porte. Hovering. You'll have to put in a demon descent, and it doesn't descend too far today.
20 seconds there, Phil, to the three chasers. But more importantly is going to be the distance between this group, the yellow jersey group, and Richie Porte a little bit further down the mountains. I'm very impressed with the way that Andy Schleck is riding over on the right-hand side, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of fun coming from Andy Schleck once we get into the Alps.
Oh, the order over the top there, 20 seconds behind Clark is the official time, behind Simon Clark, yep. Second was Roland, third Bardet, and fourth de Klerk. That was the order over the summit. This is the race for fifth place here, and I don't think it'll alter the order from what we can see right now.
1:06 for the first rider from that group to go by. Now we've got the clock running, we can have a quick look to see what the gap is going to be back to Richie Porte. Richie Porte may well be able to take the advantage of this descent, though, Phil. Here he is. You know, he's not too far away from getting to the top of this climb. He's got a couple of passengers who won't help him at all. They know he's trying to ride himself back into second place in the overall standings.
Now, this is Richie Porte struggling with a small group of riders who were up with the leaders and have fallen back to him, and he can't rely on them for any help at all as he pushes on now to try and get over the top. The clock is running. It was a 1:04 time gap from Clark to the yellow jersey. Castroviejo and Beckelance was the order over the summit there. The leading group now. Froome just staying locked on there to Castroviejo and Alejandro Valverde. He's not going to give them an inch on the descent, and he can descend very well. Having said that, they've stretched a little bit of a lead off him here.
Yeah, well, you can see there that Alejandro Valverde is sitting in second position. He's riding like a serious leader to his squad. He's dictating the pace that he wants his teammates to do. Simon Clark just taking on board some liquid there, looks over his shoulder, wants to ascertain how far behind the three chasers are. Well, they summited just 20 seconds behind him.
Still not come over the summit, Richie Porte. Confirmation is Clark, Roland, Bardet, de Klerk, Beckelance and Castroviejo. As we switch back to the mountains here, he's still a little way from the top. In fact, it's not good at all now. He's continued to go back on this climb. It's already 2:15 now, and he's not quite over the line yet, so I don't think he's going to get back up now to Chris Froome.
No, but he won't give up. He'll continue to march along like this, because don't forget, he's a very good individual time trialist, and a good time trial in a couple of days' time after tomorrow's rest day and the ride up through Loire, Atlantique and Brittany. He could ride himself back into this event. He's had a terrible day today, a bad day for him, but it can always turn around with still 2 weeks to go.
The long, fast descent to the valley and into the town of Saint-Maurice-Soulon. Then we're on the last climb of the day. Well, Castro Viejo got back control at the front of this peloton here as they continue to race on. This has been an incredible journey through these 2 days in the Pyrenees, and we are still a long way to dream to Paris for sure. Yes, thanks, Todd. Yes, while you were away, the riders picked up the leader, Simon Clark, on the descent. He seemed to wait for the 3 chasers. Wise move as they're going together now as 4 men. De Klerk, Roland, Bardet and Clark heading to the last climb of the day. Very determined effort in the Chris Froome group now, largely by Castro Viejo to try and keep his Movistar team and Chris Froome, of course, under pressure in that group. And Richie Porte's group, who's tried to reach up with his team captain, is going away backwards, I'm afraid. 2.25 minutes behind now.
Yes, well, he tried valiantly on that final climb. He got as close as 1 minute and 10 seconds, and I think the order then went out, Phil, to the Spanish team Movistar. Put the hammer down. Don't let Richie Porte get back into this group. We've got the chance here to move Alejandro Valverde up in the overall standings from 3rd to 2nd place at the end of the day. And they still might be thinking of moving a little bit further forward because they've got a little joker in the pack there, Nairo Quintana, the Colombian rider who we saw light the race on fire yesterday when the gradients got very, very steep. But I just feel that the summit of this final climb of the day is too far from the finish for them to try and do something to outfox Chris Froome. But today it's been a psychological blow to Team Sky.
We're just hearing as they go through this massive crowd as we wind our way down to the lovely town of Saint-Henri-Soulan. Richie Porte now 3:30 behind. That was a bit of a tight bend as they all crashed in there. Clarkey looking across, and is there a problem perhaps for Pierre Roland?
Well, I think just probably getting back there to call up the team car to take on board drinks.
This is now, let's have a look at that. We're on the outskirts of Saint-Henri-Soulan. Well, Roland went onto the road there. I wonder if he got a flat tyre. Anyway, he's continuing on. I don't think he has. The car's coming out to have a chat.
See how the team manager, you see how the team manager there, when he comes up alongside the rider, he pulls in the rear view mirror to prevent the rider from catching it as he pulls up alongside him. He's passing on board drinks and probably an energy bar at this stage of the game as we charge now through the town of Saint-Lary.
Yes, and just up on the shoulder of the riders is the famous climb of Pla d'Adet. But it's a road to nowhere, so it always finishes on the top. And this normally is the town we all rush into for the climb out. Saint-Henri-Soulan. And now we're heading to cross the valley now to start the last climb of the day, La Houppette d'Anzizon. It's a little bit of a valley, but not for very long. Movistar here waving for more assistance. Well, I think unless it's another Movistar rider, there won't be any assistance, because at the moment these riders are involved in some great tactical racing in the Tour de France. These 4 riders aren't altering the destiny of the yellow jersey. That is in the race behind, but they're racing for the stage win. 1 climb left to come. A terrific last few minutes of this race today. Well, the hard work being done here as they try now. These are the leaders as they try to approach the start of the last climb. We're not too far away from the last slopes of the day. And once over the top of the climb, it is 30 kilometres or 19 miles downhill to the finish. Now, there are quite a few riders in that group who can pack a power sprint if it comes down to it. But I've just got this feeling that there won't be too many guys around each other by the time we come home.
No, that's been the pressure on from the very get-go this morning. It was over the first climb of the day. They threw caution to the wind, attacks coming thick and fast. It was really initially started by Garmin Sharp from the United States. Tommy Danielson went out on the attack with rider Heyerdahl. Heyerdahl was in this leading group for a long time, but he's now been left behind as we head through the small town of Gouchen. And that town renowned for... Ooh la la, that was a little bit of a tricky corner. They weren't expecting that when they came around the corner.
Well, let's hope the peloton get a little bit more warning. That really did catch them off guard here in this small Pyrenean town. That's a left-hand bend, and you suddenly are faced up with an obstruction. They can go both ways, but they chose to alter course, and that's Simon Clark, the Australian. Always obeys the laws of the road, that man.
It was a bit precarious.
Approaching the same place now, Paul.
You never know what is going to be around a corner. You've got to hold off a fraction to be able to change your line, just exactly as those riders did as they got part way around that corner. But I would think 1 or 2 heart rates went up to over 200 at that point.
Well, we're just about 500. Oh, there we are. 9.9 kilometres to the top of the last climb of the day at Lauquet. Now, these boys have seen it first. They've basically been in charge for the last 3 mountains now. Simon Clark came up to them over the top of the Col de Périssord. He's the rider at the front right with the yellow on his jersey. And Simon won the last climb on his own. He waited. Now, not very far behind. About 14 seconds, Paul, is the group containing where we see the attacks will now come from.
Yeah, well, this climb, 9.9 kilometres, average grade of 7.5%. The summit is at 30 kilometres to go. It peaks out at 5,100 feet. But this 4-man leading group does not have much of an advantage. Team Movistar of Alejandro Valverde have taken this race to the Spanish fans today, and there are plenty of Spanish fans. We're only 4 or 5 kilometres at the summit of many of these climbs, away from the frontier between France and Spain. But you can see the job of work that Movistar have done this afternoon. This is one of the youngsters, Bardet, is about to make the move.
Bardet built up, took a look at them, accelerated away. Well, this is another surprise in the Tour de France. As Bardet, one of the youngest riders in the race, first tour for him, has shot away.
22 years of age. He's participating in the Tour de France for the first time. Caught them off guard a fraction there. He's 20th overall. He's the second-place Frenchman, and he's hit them very hard. The chase behind is coming from Simon Clark, but they're only 10 or 15 seconds, Phil, ahead of the main field.
But Bardet is a serious worry for Yellow. They can't let him go. They've got to have to stay with him because his difference overnight is 3 minutes and 35 seconds. They cannot allow him to go away. If the message gets back to the leaders of the Tour, the counter-attack must come. This looks like Jon Bakelants has gone off the back, and a great shame. He's been great. Roland immediately has gone back into the peloton, giving them all a good stir, saying, I'm only dropping back to join you. I'm feeling fine, just to let them know. But the teammates here of Valverde, as Chavanel got back on the descent, and he's about to go off again there.
Well, it's a bit of a yo-yo day in the mountains if you're not a great climber, and also it's a bit difficult when you've got teams like Movistar throwing a real serious spanner in the works. The pressure is on. They're trying to split the field in the early part of this climb, but I think more than anything else, Phil, they're trying to just make sure they can set the victory up for Alejandro Valverde, who is sat strongly in second position. A little bit further back, you've got the white jersey. That is Nairo Quintana, the Colombian rider from the region of Boyacá. He has got the ability to come out of the gap. Andrew Talansky is still in this group. He's at the back there in the blue jersey of Team Garmin Sharp. Over to the left-hand side is Dan Martin, the young Irishman on the same team.
And the wonderful old man of the race, Jens Voigt, is still hanging on to the back of that peloton. As now, Romain Bardet tries to ride away to victory. Now a real sort out. They're bringing the race all together with the heads of state. Remember, Alberto Contador is still here, so too is Cadel Evans, and Chris Froome has his hands full. Looking right down into the lens of the Movistar team here now. What a brilliant tactic they've played today. Stripped of all of his teammates, the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. Halfway up the last climb of the day, they're about to pick up Romain Bardet. And then surely somebody from Movistar, Valverde or Quintana, will attack.
Well, Alberto Contador moving to the front of this group as well to make sure that he's present in the front end of this bike race. This man has showed a serious amount of defiance, Romain Bardet, just 22 years of age, his first participation in the Tour de France, and he's proving again that France is starting to produce some very good climbers.
This has been one of the best days of racing through the Pyrenees I can actually recall here. It's been a glorious day as far as the weather's concerned. 4 first category climbs. Bardet is caught by the Movistar team, Rui Costa and Castroviejo, and now Valverde looking very cool. 3 riders back as we go to the rear of the field here. This is Morabito, teammate of Cadel Evans. Evans is still in here somewhere. I haven't really seen him, but he's in here. And Alberto Contador is here. Froome has done the same tactic all day, Paul. He's locked his wheel onto Valverde because logically, he's the next man to wear yellow if Froome cracks. He's already up to second because of the loss of time now by Richie Porte.
Well, Phil, of all of the riders in the top 10 in the overall standings at the start of the day, only one man has missed out, and that's Richie Porte of Australia.
Yep.
He did so much work yesterday to keep himself up at the top end of the overall standings, to set up the victory for Chris Froome, that I think today he has paid the effort. Sadly,
those two riders don't affect the destiny of the yellow jersey. In fact, Chris Froome might be rather delighted that they've made that, because Fuglsang is 3:27 behind. So if these two are both are very good climbers. Now, is this Igor Anton at last getting away from the front? He was yo-yoing off the back not long ago. No reaction at all. The infight for yellows continued. Well, I'll tell you what, Nairo Quintana started a flurry of attacks, and he's not part of it.
Well, the unfortunate thing, Phil, for Team Movistar is they've assassinated the team this afternoon. Their guys in this group are actually weakened and clipped to the back. 3.9 kilometres to go to the summit. Dan Martin from Ireland just gone through there. Now there's another move from Nairo Quintana.
Well, now he's going to go and repair the damage. He started it. Now he's given them a chance. And, of course, Froome now reacts, and he goes after the young climber from Colombia, because this man could take his yellow jersey, and there's a good turn of speed from Froome.
No, Froome is put on the back foot. He has to defend here this afternoon. Look at Andy Schleck in third or fourth position there. How the Luxembourger responded very quickly to those attacks.
Well, Michael Rogers has climbed his way back onto the tail of this group, but now they are continuing. The breakaways will go, but they're not going to counter the moves of those three riders up front. There's only two men that Froome can look after, and this will be after to the white jersey of Nairo Quintana and the other jersey of Valverde. They're the men he's got to monitor. The other three can go. And here goes again. Nairo Quintana is going again. And again, Chris Froome has got to answer. He buries his head. He's got to hook up to that back wheel and hang on in there, because this man could disappear over the top of this hill and steal the yellow jersey of Froome.
Well, Phil, this is what I was explaining to you yesterday about real pure climbers. They can attack again and again and again. Now, that is the kind of movement that's going to hurt Chris Froome this afternoon. And he hasn't got any teammates up alongside him to give him any assistance at all. He has to assume the whole of the responsibility of chasing down the guys who he feels are dangerous.
Well, Euskaltel that rider, it was Nieve on the left who's coming back to the group. We still have Dan Martin and Fuglsang up the front. And if we just swung to the back, I think we'd see that this big group has disintegrated under the pressure of these attacks here. This is now the rear of the group here, as this is Hubert Dupont.
But the action is all really on at the front as these guys are all looking at each other. It's nice to see Andy Schleck at the front of the Tour de France in the blue helmet there with his jersey open. I wonder if he's going to have a little dig here this afternoon, because in the last month, Phil, just leading up to the Tour de France, we started to see a little glimpse of the Andy Schleck of old.
Now up to the man who's caused all of the problems here, and it's Dan Martin of Garmin Sharp here, as he's now trying to get clear for the stage win. He's got a very good ally in Fuglsang.
Right, well, we've got Saxo Tinkoff now taking over the pacemaking. They've had enough of these constant accelerations. They want to just have one steady tempo up to the summit of this climb. Andy Schleck has moved up the outside and is riding very comfortably ahead of Quintana. The yellow... So now there's another move from Quintana, but there's got to be a reaction from Chris Froome. Chris Froome there in the yellow jersey is very, very attentive. He knows he can't give Quintana too much freedom on a day like this. And all of the time, just sitting on his wheel, Alejandro Valverde and Alberto Contador, although Andy Schleck's getting in on the action too.
Schleck is the surprise right now, interfering. He was awarded the 2010 Tour de France after the disqualification of Contador for drugs. And now they're both in this group here. Every time you get those accelerations, riders will drop off at the moment. This is Moreno Fernandez. He's gone. Now, It doesn't look as though these attacks are actually hurting Chris Froome. He gets across quite cool. His face is saying nothing whatsoever. We've still got Joaquim Rodriguez, number 101, on the left here as well. He's still there. Jean-Christophe Perrault, the leader of the French AG2R team. He's still there. But that group has gone down considerably in size.
Well, a lot of people last night, Phil, were saying, well, the Tour de France is over. Chris Froome was so dominant that he's obviously just going to ride around the rest of this race and make his way up to Paris. Well, I think Movistar of Spain and Alejandro Valverde have other ideas. Don't forget, we've only done a week of this race. There's still 2 weeks to go. We haven't even reached half distance in mileage as we've got to go right the way across France. We're flying up to the north of France tonight, right the way across down through the middle, and then into the Alps down towards the end. This race is going to be a battle right the way up until the final day on the Champs-Élysées.
Well, they have whittled it down to a select bunch of 15 riders chasing 2. Nobody else is going to decide this day's stage of the Tour de France. Dan Martin here. He knows Fuglsang very well. He's got a good ally, a good pacemaker. Together they can go to the finish. I'm not sure that Martin can outsprint Fuglsang at the end.
Don't forget who was the winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège in the early part of this year, Dan Martin. It was an uphill finish, I'll admit, on that occasion, but also don't forget who his uncle is, because his uncle is none other than Stephen Roche, who won the Tour de France in 1987, and Stephen is expecting big things from Dan Martin in this year's Tour.
There's the summit. The orange jersey by way are for Euskaltel Euskadi, but they still shout just as loudly. And Dan Martin's taking control for the points in the King of the Mountains. They won't be sharing anything if they survive to the finish now in Bagnes de Bigorre. A little bit of a late lunch there for Fuglsang. And take it easy, because this has a tortuous beginning, this descent.
Well, he gets maximum points. This is Wout Poels in 3rd position out on the road, and still no reaction at all coming from that group of the heads of state of the Tour de France this year. The only man from the top 10 who's missed out is Richie Porte. He is a long way behind. The computer telling us now more than 9 minutes behind the yellow jersey group. And any thought of a high place overhaul for him is disappearing out of the window.
Wout Poels, here he is, wanted a drink there, but nobody prepared to offer him one. Now they come over the top, 42 seconds behind the 2 leaders, and well, I think Chris Froome now can breathe a sigh of relief. He's controlled all of the pacemaking by Movistar today. It's all downhill apart from a little blimp on the descent, and he'll just keep a close eye now. They've lost a chance to get time today for sure.
No, certainly. I think the climb was too far to go from the finish, but what's more important is the psychological boost that Movistar will have by knowing that they have made Team Sky crumble on a mountain stage, and they can nurture thoughts of doing the same thing again once they get down to the Alps in the last week of this race.
Well, we're watching the descent now, where they will, it's a very, very curly beginning as they go on the way down, as they continue on. Well, it's time for the Road ID pop quiz. For answers, by the way, to all the previous questions, go to roadid.com. Today's question: who is the youngest ever Tour de France stage winner? Now, I told you this 3 days ago in commentary. Head on over to roadid.com/TDF to make your prediction and get entered to win daily prizes and a VIP trip to Paris for next year's Tour de France. The descent is on. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be going down towards the finish. Long straight descent. These are over now, the little blimp on the map, as we poor old rider Heyerdahl, teammate of Christian van der Velde, who's now out of the race. He's had a great day. They clearly came out. He's back as far as Richie Porte now, rider Heyerdahl. They had a plan like Movistar today, and they've really played out cards, and if Dan Martin can complete it for Garmin Sharp, that would be terrific.
Yes, I think, you know, Phil, when you think about it, at the end of the day, Garmin Sharp were the team that came out and launched the first attacks with, first of all, David Miller, then Tom Danielson, then after that it was taking over with Dan Martin. But Movistar now are getting themselves back into control. They are the riders who have dictated the pace for nearly all of this race. Almost 100 kilometers the pace has been done by Movistar and Alejandro Valverde. They want to make sure that they get some recompense for all of the work they've put in here this afternoon. So now they're rallying the troops again at the front. What they want to do is pull back those two leaders, but those are two very strong men in Fuglsang and Dan Martin.
Well, we're showing 50 seconds. I can hear the race referee saying it is 55 seconds. Either way, it'll be cheers for Garmin Sharp if the gap is still on the ascendancy. Jakob Fuglsang here, he really does push on the Danish rider. He's on the Kazakh team from Astana, and they've had a terrible tour too. They've lost 4 riders so far of their 9 men. And he really prefers to descend a lot quicker. Dan Martin here likes to lay off the back and see his own way down. It's all downhill now to the finish after an incredible day in the Pyrenees, in glorious weather, and the people here enjoying the passage of the Tour de France.
No, that's what it's been all about this afternoon. And there's a massive big chase.
Well, this chase is on. It's come down to 46 seconds. A lot of pressure being put on. Wout Poels has now been picked up out on the course. There it is, the catch. And this is still Kwiatkowski. Kwiatkowski down there. Wants our camera out of the way. He's feeling inspired now. He's trying to go to catch the other two by the look of it.
Well, he gets down into a low-profile position now. They cannot allow him to move off the front because he's a very close rider in the young rider competition, which is currently being led by Nairo Quintana. So they won't allow him too much freedom. But what this move will do, it'll start to eat into the advantage of the two leaders. And in fact, it is doing so as we speak, because it's down to 44 seconds.
Well, this is the chase on the long straight down towards the bottom right now. It's a long, long, thin ride as they make their way. This is a Radio Shack rider just in front of us, and they start the descent. Across the valley now, and they're going to pick up the wind up there. So back to 48 seconds. Only those 13 riders behind have any chance. They've picked up Wout Poels, so it's 2 versus 13 now. Can they catch him before the finish? We'll catch him. 13 minutes to go, probably 15 minutes of racing, and they're still clear. And Dan Martin anxious to get on with this. He is driving those gears around. He won't like our camera being in the way. Move over.
Well, the big advantage they do have is it's downhill almost to the finish line here in Bagnères de Bigorre. And that's the important thing that might just give them that slim advantage. 31 seconds at speeds like this is just 500 meters. As they go around these corners, they will be out of sight. But once we get into the long straightaways, the group of the yellow jersey behind will have a chance to spot how far away they are.
30 seconds the gap as they race now down to the finishing line in Bagnères de Bigorre. 7 miles to go. Little flick of the arm there from Robert Gesink saying next turn please. But he's really driving on here because Belkin had done so well, and with Bouk Mollema here and Laurens ten Dam, they've got a chance of winning this in the sprint today.
No, that's the idea, and that's why Gesink has come forward to do the pacemaking. And you can see that Movistar have been really put under pressure. They have dictated the pace throughout the whole of today. Tonight, we are going to talk about an incredible Pyrenean stage that we've witnessed here this afternoon. The question is, who can crown it out and take the final stage in the Pyrenees in the 100th edition of the Tour?
It's a fine effort, I have to say, by Robert Gesink. He's got it back to 26 seconds here, but I think energy is running out, and Quintana's not interested in helping him.
And going up there from, it looked like Laurens ten Dam for the team car to come forward. I think he wants to get some final information before they start to get to the outskirts of town. It's inside of 30 seconds now, and Robert Gesink, having had a difficult day yesterday, has bounced back very well, unlike a lot of other riders in this Tour.
Yes, he tried to go yesterday and he just waved the cameras past him. He couldn't do it. Well, 11 riders who finished the Tour de France yesterday and took the leadership overall. The only one missing is Richie Porte. He falls away from second place and will plunge probably down into outside the top 50 now. Everybody else behind the second place move up one. Valverde will now be second tonight overall. Turning for the finish now, and 2.8 kilometers to go. Cheers all the way from a magnificent crowd in the Pyrenees.
Well, these two riders are the guys who made the move on the final climb of the day, and once they got to the summit of that climb with a 30-second or so advantage, they worked brilliantly together. Now it's a question of which of these two men is going to win. I have to say, I really don't know, because neither of them are prolific winners, although Dan Martin did win Liège-Bastogne-Liège in the sprint. Fuglsang hasn't had an individual victory so far this season, and he's been much better in the longer stage races.
Well, they just about got a little time in the last kilometre to try and have a bit of cat and mouse, but not a lot. We're looking for the 2-kilometre banner now. Fuglsang back on full bore here now. Martin just getting into his slipstream, saving a little bit of energy, few deep breaths, and get up and do some more pace making. 33 seconds surely is enough for these two to fight out what has been a magnificent day in the Pyrenees in the Tour de France. Martin straight back to the front.
Well, he knows what he has to do. He knows he's got to try and come out of the slipstream of Jakob Fuglsang if he wants to get the victory here this afternoon. They also know, Phil, as they look here at the 2-kilometre to go banner, they can't mess about and try and force one rider or another to the front of the line until they get inside of the last kilometre, and more likely closer to the 500-metre to go mark.
Under 2 kilometres, and here come the peloton. Steve Morabito is on the front as they head towards 2 kilometres as well. The yellow jersey of Froome, they attacked it well today, but he's happy now. All riders who finish together get the same time. He'll keep his gains of yesterday.
Well, 26 years of age for Dan Martin in second position. It would be fairly good for his team if he was to get the victory this afternoon, because they're the guys who came out of the starting blocks with a plan. That was to make this an extremely tough Pyrenean stage. And I tell you, everybody that's been in the stage this afternoon will know that tonight when they get onto that plane to fly up towards Nantes for the restart after the rest day.
1.3 kilometres to go. You won't bridge 33 seconds, but hey, they've been trying for the last 30 kilometres to bridge it. It's not going to happen now. The winner of the stage will come from here.
Well, the question is for Dan Martin, he's going through his mind, is we've succeeded now, we're at the kilometre banner, we've got 30 seconds advantage. What am I going to do to win the stage? He is now going to force Fuglsang to do the pacemaking. He wants to be in second position because he knows that he's got to get out of the slipstream once the sprint starts.
They swing into the straight outside of my commentary box. They're pounding the boards to pieces here. Fuglsang doesn't want Martin on his back wheel. Who would have thought this is how he would end a journey through the high mountains of the Pyrenees? Almost 5 hours. Martin will wait as long as he can. The seconds are closing off. They don't care. They can see the finish very shortly.
He's waiting for Fuglsang to open up the sprint, but as they get closer to the finish, if he's still got a strong set of legs, he's got to try and surprise him with the first initial jump.
Dan Martin, who lives in the Midlands in Great Britain, his dad Neil now will be in bits here watching his son in the Tour de France as they wait to see, can he do it? He's gone, and Fuglsang grits his teeth, but he's been forced onto the back wheel. It's a tricky finish. They wanted that left hand at 300 metres from the line. It's a long way to go to the line. If Fuglsang can hold this and keep in his slipstream, Martin looked to see where he'd gone, kicks again. Dan Martin wins for Garmin Sharp, and that is a tremendous win in his second Tour de France.
Well, he did it perfectly there, Phil. He waited till the time when he could get the surprise jump. He looked at the race book. He knew he had to go into that corner.
Up now is the men from Katusha. Kwiatkowski in the white jersey. He packs a pretty powerful sprint finish, beaten on the line, I think, there by the Katusha rider. And I think it was Rodriguez who just pipped him on the line. Chris Froome safely home after his most nervous day in his first day in yellow in the Tour de France, but at the end of it, he lost nothing.
Nothing at all. He will now have 1 minute and 25 seconds advantage over Alejandro Valverde in the overall standings. I say good recompense for Garmin Sharp here this afternoon, because they went out with a plan today. They'd said they wanted to come to the Tour de France this year with a team of climbers. They left some strong men behind. Tyler Farrer, their sprinter, Thor Hushovd, the former world champion, but that was the move that won the race for Dan Martin there. He got the jump just before this corner. He'd obviously studied the race handbook. He knew there was only 200 metres to go from that final corner. His initial jump and the way he went around that corner, Phil, he opened up a very smart gap, and Fuglsang could do nothing to get back into the slipstream of the Irishman.
Well, after all, Martin was the rider to make the winning move. Fuglsang spotted it and joined him. And in fact, if Fuglsang had not come up to Martin after that early part of the climb, I don't think one man would have kept that chase off
The overall then, Martin gets in from Fuglsang, and Kwiatkowski got the third place. Back out on the highway here, this is Richie Porte, so no good news for him today like there was yesterday when he crossed the line in second place. He's plummeted out of probably the top 45 riders in the Tour de France overall today. He's not going to worry so much about that. He was in this race to make sure Chris Froome wins it and stays in yellow. So far so good, but he's wasted an awful lot of energy today to try and reach that Froome group, and he got so close, just over a minute behind it, and then he cracked. He's a fighter though, and a great bike rider from Tasmania in Australia. Let's just have a look then. I think we can show you the first results from the stage here. The transponders have been interpreted. No doubt who the winner was. Dan Martin, Jakob Fuglsang in second place. Kwiatkowski just got the edge at third place. Daniel Moreno was the sprinter from Katusha in fourth. Hakim Rodriguez right behind him there in fifth. They're all timed at 20 seconds on the line. The yellow jersey group. Evans in sixth place. Wout Poels 7. And the top 10 completed by Maxime Montfort. The men that mattered didn't contest the sprint at all because they all get the same time. Valverde 11th, Schleck 12th, Contador 13, 14 Froome, 15 Kreuziger, all watching one another in the sprint, all finishing alongside one another, 20 seconds behind the winner today. Wow, what a great day of racing this has been in the Tour de France. It's not done for us yet. We'll take a break, and when you come back, we'll try and catch a word with Dan Martin, and we'll certainly see them presented on the podium. See you in a moment. On the podium is Neil Martin. He receives his award here, Neil Martin. It was his uncle Stephen who last won the stage for Ireland in the Tour de France in 1992.
I think you meant Dan Martin. You were talking about his dad there, Neil
Did
Martin.
I say Neil? Well, Neil will be happy back home.
He certainly will be very happy back home in the Midlands, but that was a very clever move by Dan Martin. He'd obviously studied the finish line properly in the book. He knew exactly where he wanted to make the move. He made it just before that 200 metre to go, swinger to the left-hand side, and he got the jump on Fuglsang just into the corner, and after that it was history.
Being introduced there to the President of France, Francois Hollande. The Mid-Club Ultra yellow jersey standings unchanged for the leader, but Valverde still the same time gap, moves up into second place. Mollema moves up to third. Laurens ten Dam fourth, and Roman Kreuziger fifth. All the time gaps are the same. Contador is sixth now. Quintana is up to seventh. Dan Martin, because of his small gain there, has come into the top 10 with 8th place now. And Hakim Rodriguez is ninth, and Rui Costa is 10th.